I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order, please. The first item is our invocation. If everybody will please rise and take a moment of silence and think of your thoughts on what is before us tonight. And following our invocation, Ms. Edmonds will give us, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a series of public hearings that we need to get started on. And the first one is 2025 Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan Amendment for Shaw Development. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a number of public hearings tonight that the board will take action on at their next meeting, which is actually Wednesday, the 16th, I believe is the right date for all the public hearings that are before you tonight. The first one is a comprehensive plan amendment for Shaw Development. It's for the property that's the former Elliston Lafayette Elementary School. It's about an 8-acre property. It was recently sold at auction by the board and purchased by Shaw Development. Shaw is now requesting that the comprehensive plan amendment, which is the future land use designation, not the zoning of the parcel, but the future land use designation, from plan light industrial commercial to medium density residential. The current zoning on the property is agriculture A1. And when this went through the Planning Commission hearings, the Planning Commission also decided that they would like to consider the adjoining properties, and I'll show you a map of those. The property that's the subject of this request is the property right in the middle here, which is the 8-acre piece of property. The Planning Commission wanted to consider all the properties in this area here that are outlined in yellow and have a discussion about it and have the public hearing for all those properties. What they were concerned about was having a piece of medium density residential property in the middle of the property that was still designated as plan light industrial commercial. We've advertised and we've notified the adjoining property owners that their property was also being considered for an amendment. But the only parcel requested at this point before you is the parcel that Shaw currently owns, the former school site. And this is just a copy of the comprehensive plan amendment, which shows the purple area, the purple crosshatched area, which is this area here, which, as I said earlier, is currently designated as light industrial / commercial. This is just the Elliston Village plan, which shows the larger area that the comprehensive plan encompasses for the Elliston, Lafayette, and Roanoke area. Several years ago, the Board of Supervisors passed a policy related to comprehensive plan amendments, and the policy basically sets forth 2 times a year when amendments can be considered, and that's in February and August of each year that the staff will receive requests that anybody has, and then we'll take those requests and review them at the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on those requests. We received 2 requests this August, so that these 2 are coming from that August cycle and coming forward to you from there. And there is criteria that the board had set forth to look at when considering amendments to the comprehensive plan, and I've outlined those here. And the subject property was misinterpreted or overlooked in the comprehensive plan as one of the criteria. Another one is conditions have changed substantially since the last comprehensive plan update, necessitating a change. And an example given is just changes in surrounding land use or economic conditions around the area. Thirdly, an undue hardship exists which substantially limits the use of the subject property. And then number 4, the amendment will effectively aid in the implementation of other goals of the comprehensive plan. And really, the policy says that the proposed amendment should meet one of those criteria. The property was originally identified as civic in the initial Elliston-Lafayette Village Plan. At that time, the school was in operation on that property. The designation changed in 2012 when we did the Elliston-Lafayette corridor, Route 11 460 corridor study. We looked at that area. We held a couple of public hearings, and at that time, the consultant that we worked with recommended that it be changed to planned light industrial commercial in that area. And part of that was was the expectation of the intermodal site, that the property would be developed for the intermodal site. This was just after the court case had been finally determined by the Supreme Court. So it was changed to the light industrial commercial designation. And all the properties under consideration, including the school site, are all currently zoned agriculture A1. Just another note that staff made in the staff analysis is that the designation to medium density residential really limits the future use of the properties to really just that particular use of medium density residential. So after staff reviewed it and after the Planning Commission talked about it a couple times, staff recommended changing the use to mixed use rather than medium density residential. And the thinking there is that this would allow the most variety of potential uses, whether it's commercial or residential, or even maybe some light industrial manufacturing if it's appropriate for that area. Just a note that I'll point out is that even no matter what change is made to the comprehensive plan, that a change in zoning designation will still require approval of a specific proposal by the Board of Supervisors, require another public hearing and specific notification to adjoining property owners. This is simply to change the future land use designation and not the zoning of a particular piece of property. Staff believes that conditions have changed substantially since the last plan update in 2012 on this property, necessitating a change. And part of that is due to the intermodal site, kind of the uncertainty of that development, whether or not it's going to happen at all. And just another fact of just the economic conditions in that area, that there hasn't been any real new development in that particular area as a result of the intermodal proposal. Just another note is that the specific request that has now been submitted as a rezoning for townhouse development on this property would also further the housing goals of the comprehensive plan and the village plan. So staff believes that this request does comply with that criteria. The Planning Commission met on September 11th and reviewed the request and had public hearing. 2 citizens gave public comments, and those concerns were about changing the designation and then also about what the specific use of the property was going to be. At that point, the discussion was really limited to the future land use designation because it was not a rezoning request for a specific use at that time. So with the Planning Commission considered all the information and they recommended approval of this request to the mixed use designation, not the medium density residential. And they also included all the parcels within that outlined area in yellow to their recommendation. So the recommendation was to change the designation of all 7 parcels. Go up one more. All of these parcels. Change all of the designations of all those parcels from planned light industrial commercial to mixed use designation. And that is my presentation information. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I believe some representatives from Shaw are also here that might want to say a few words or be able to answer some additional
Okay, any questions of the board?
Got one. You said it's changed from planned commercial?
Planned light industrial / commercial
yeah.
is the designation.
I thought none of it had that hadn't been done to any of them up to now.
There has not.
So how did it get to be that instead of that?
How to get designated as planned light industrial?
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, if it's never been designated as anything other than A1 agriculture, how are we referencing the other one back, but it's going from that to that? Looks like to me it'd be going from agriculture to that.
Well, the agriculture A1 is the zoning district for the particular property that kind of limits the particular uses that can happen on the property. But the future land use designation that was set forth was planned light industrial commercial. So it's always been A1 because of the school was there and actually all the other properties as well. It would take a subsequent rezoning by the individual property owners to change that zoning to industrial or to a commercial use. So that the zoning hasn't changed and the zoning will not change as a result of this request. This is just the comprehensive plan amendment for the future land use. But part of it is from Shaw looking at it is their intention is to develop townhouse development, which with the designation of planned light industrial commercial is not the most suitable designation for that.
Okay, I just couldn't figure out why
Yeah, so
it was A1 and then suddenly it went from, you moved it up to something else and then we're putting something else when it really had never changed at all.
Right, it was originally designated as civic because of the school site, and then most recently in 2012 is when it changed to planned light industrial. And I think part of the thinking was that if the intermodal comes in, that there would be some stimulation of the economy in that area, that there would be a need for industrial uses or commercial uses, but we just haven't seen that up to this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Do you remember, maybe my fellow supervisors know this, when did we adopt that village plan? It was recently.
I think it was 05 or 07. Sorry, I don't have the exact date.
It was. Wasn't there something more recent, though?
That we did an update in 2012 to this particular, to really just a portion of this particular village.
Okay.
Which is when we changed it to that plan.
To planned light industrial.
Yeah, so the
commercial.
original village plan designated it as civic, this particular piece of property.
Okay. And so this plan, this new designation would be changing it to mixed use, correct?
Correct.
On the planning commission's
That's what the planning commission has recommended, yes.
Can you walk me through, because it seems like the rezoning, or not the rezoning, I'm sorry, this change of future land use designation that the Planning Commission is recommending is to something that neither the developer nor the adjoining property owners wanted. And in fact, the Planning Commission decided to take into account the other property owners that didn't request this at all.
Right.
And change the designation. Can you maybe walk me through why the Planning Commission decided to do this at this time?
Well, the request came forward for the one particular piece of property
Yes.
to change to medium density. Staff looked at it and said, well, it really doesn't make sense to change one parcel in the middle of all these parcels to medium density residential and have it surrounded by planned industrial.
Yes.
So our suggestion was that you consider changing it to mixed use. And if you change that to mixed use, you might want to consider these other parcels as well. And the part of the thinking was that it actually gives the property owners more flexibility as far as future opportunities, because it could allow mixed-use housing, it could allow mixed-use commercial, it could allow a mix of commercial and housing. So it kind of gives them a little more flexibility actually than the current designation.
Okay, but I guess what I'm kind of asking is this a solution in search of a problem? I mean, is this in fact actually going to solve the issue at hand, or is it creating more problems with the adjoining landowners who, to my understanding reading the packet, were not necessarily supportive of this change, or at least the two that came and spoke?
Yeah, and maybe Mr. Tuck can share more about it. I don't know that there was adamant opposition to it. I think there was some I don't know the right word, just a lack of understanding of what the actual change was going to be. And I think a lot of people thought that we were rezoning their property
Yes.
to a different zoning designation, which is not what we're proposing. And actually, in my opinion, the opposition or the uncertainty about it dropped from one meeting to the next meeting I don't think there was as much, I don't want to use opposition, I don't know if that's the right word, but as much confusion maybe at the second meeting that we had, because we actually talked about it at 2 different meetings. I don't think there was as much confusion at the second meeting about actually what we were doing. Now, I certainly won't say that everybody wanted their property designation changed, but I think it was more about just not fully understanding what the change represented. And the thinking that plan light industrial would give them more opportunity for a large industrial use on the property, which, as staff looked at it, considered it, these parcels are very small. It would really take combining many of these parcels together to actually get a significant industrial development on any one of these parcels. And that was part of staff's logic of proposing mixed use instead and just allowing more flexibilities for these smaller property owners.
Well, mixed use, it seems to me, it's just kind of a catch-all, right? It gives more flexibility, I guess is the best way to say it, is that it gives them an opportunity. If residential is what the economy is looking at in this area, then it gives them an opportunity to sell their property for residential use, or if Dollar General or some other convenience store or something like that is looking in the area, then this would also give them that flexibility to allow the property to be rezoned. So it would still take a specific request for a specific use that would have to come back to this board for approval.
And that's what I took away from the speakers, that they wanted flexibility, and they were worried that somehow that this designation was going to affect their property values, because they had maybe, and it seemed like in my interpretation of things, they were hoping that they might be able to sell their property at some point in time for an industrial use. And I think one of them may have mentioned the propane tanks or something along those lines, storage.
Gas fuel storage.
And these lots just aren't large enough that we would see a large industry. And so I think what the Planning Commission was trying to do was to give those folks some flexibility, because it is right there on Route 11, and trying to open that up. And there was also some questions about, was there going to be access from Route 11? And there's going to be, the plan is to have access from Route 11 to the 8 acres that's being developed. So it seemed, after the staff explained the mixed use, that it was going to give them more flexibility, and that it wasn't a rezoning, that their property wasn't being rezoned. They seemed, my interpretations of their reactions were they were satisfied. But
I would agree. I mean, I felt like there was more agreement about what the proposal was about after the second meeting and after the second public hearing that we had. The other thing was, we didn't really want to consider changing the designation of all properties to medium density residential either, because that does not give them much flexibility. That would really limit their potential, their future potential of the property. So that's another reason we kind of steered towards the mixed use proposal instead of the medium density proposal.
And there was even some speakers that said, I don't necessarily, I've got a corner piece of, I think one of the folks was talking about a corner lot, and that they might want a gas station or a convenience store or something along those lines, and this seemed to meet some of their concerns, or at least keep that possibility open for them.
Right. And the recommendation before you is to change it for all of them. The board still has complete discretion on that. If you want to change none of them, or you want to change just the one that made the request, that's certainly your prerogative if you want to do that.
Yeah, if I may, when we had these properties auctioned off back a couple months ago, we told the folks that we would help them with, the way I heard it was that we would try and help them with anything to speed up any zoning problems or anything that they may have. And it seems to me like we're trying to slow it down rather than speed it up. I don't know, but it seems that way. That we're throwing more wood into the fire when it's not burning. We're taking these other properties and trying to get them all done. It seems to me like they should kind of be responsible for asking for their own.
And that's fine if it was just the planning commission's recommendation to keep, since those parcels are all kind of isolated by the road and the railroad, that changing the designation of all of them seemed to make sense. But that's just the planning commission's recommendation.
And that would be fine if all of them wants it.
And you may, the public hearing tonight may show that some of those people, do not want that change to their property.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? We have two people signed up for the public hearing, and one of them is the principals and the engineer. The first person is Tom Rutledge, but if you want to speak, John Neal, please give your name and address, and you have 5 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Neal. I'm an engineer with Gay & Neal, located here in Christiansburg at 1260 Radford Street. I think Steve handled all the points of the presentation as far as the comp plan amendment and the request and the criteria to meet that amendment. I don't want to rehash that if I can. I'm more than happy to. We'll speed things along if you all are okay with that. I think there's a couple of great questions. We wanted to give you our take on things. Shaw Development, and Tom Rutledge is here, and he'll be happy to answer any questions as well. Shaw Development purchased the property from the county at the auction several months ago. So that is one of those conditions that definitely has changed since the adoption of the Lafayette area plan back about a year ago, I think. But specifically, we completely accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and staff's recommendation. We had initially requested medium density residential for only our property. We probably had a little bit of a narrow vision for what we were looking at. Thankfully, staff was taking into account the entire Lafayette area, and they suggested the mixed use designation for all of the properties. We think that's a very good idea and are very willing to accept that. And at the Planning Commission meeting, after our presentation, we went out in the hall and met with, I think, about 4 or 5 of all the property owners, and I think at least one of them are here tonight. And we feel like we come to a relatively good consensus as far as everybody thinking that the mixed use would probably be the way to go for this area, because we are bounded by the railroad, old 460 and new 460, I guess, or today's 460. And one of the things that we talked about, and we presented them, we showed them our concept plan that has been submitted to the county as a rezoning application that's kind of following along behind this comprehensive plan amendment request. And so we talked with them, addressed some of their specific concerns. One of the concerns that one of the property owners mentioned that night, they were concerned that we would be using North Fork Road and Tango Lane, which was the only access to the school site when it operated as an elementary school. We have secured approval from VDOT to have a right-in, right-out entrance off of new 460. I'll continue to call it new if that's okay, just to keep it clarified. So we have secured that entrance, and that would provide 2 points of access to most of the properties that you see on the screen there. And in talking with them, we're going to work with them and actually have a neighborhood meeting down at the Elliston Fire Station either Thursday or Monday. We're working with the property owners to get consensus on what night is the best night, where we're going to go over our rezoning application and our proposal and talk about some of the key things that we want to add and some of the things that they may want to see in our proposal as well. So that's kind of tracking along behind the comp plan amendment. I do, as I said, I think we had general consensus that the mixed use designation allows the greatest flexibility of everyone, and we feel like that we are bringing an anchor for the other properties for their value. One of the things we're doing is bringing, if you look at the rezoning application, the residential use of a density of residential use that might support or additionally support some of the commercial uses that some of our adjacent property owners might want to develop in the future. So that's kind of the theory behind where we're going. Certainly, I think if some of the neighbors here, they might want to chime in. But we're trying to work pretty closely with them so that we have a cohesive stance on the comp plan amendment, as well as when we come before you in a month or so the rezoning application as well, so that you have full support of what we're asking for in the zoning application. And last but not least, I just wanted to touch on when you all did the amendment to PLU 1.1.1 in 2005, specifically it says identify preferred development patterns in order to, number one was promote growth where it can be supported by infrastructure improvements. And going to medium density residential and with our zoning application, we have the infrastructure in place. We're adjacent to a major highway. We've secured an access off of that highway, as well as having public water and sewer. So we're sort of promoting some growth where it is supported, and then also maintaining the existing community character was number two. And we think a mixed-use development with some residential and some commercial is probably more in keeping with the community character than planned light industrial. And I'm done.
Any questions, Mr. Neal? Okay.
Thank you for your time.
And is there anybody in the audience who would like to address this public hearing? If so, please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing no one, we'll close this public hearing. Our next public hearing is a 2025 County Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Montgomery County Planning Commission request for an amendment in the 2025 Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan to change the policy map designating approximately 8.33 acres designation of former Prices Fork Elementary School property located at 4237 Prices Fork Road. And Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a very similar request. It's another former school site, and again, since this property is up for sale and being considered a proposal under consideration, this was the time during the cycle that I mentioned earlier, February or August, to request the amendment for a comprehensive plan amendment. This property is also designated currently a civic because, again, it's a school and had been a school at the time the village plan was adopted. The current zoning of the property is agriculture, just like the previous one we had discussed. This one is a little bit different because the properties on each side of this particular piece of property are already designated mixed use. So the proposal is to also make this one mixed use. So the property in the light blue color here will be changed to purple, which is the mixed use category here in Prices Fork, and have those properties all be mixed use designation. Staff is recommending that the property be changed to mixed use designation. As I said earlier, any change in the specific development of the property for anything that other than what's allowed by right in the agriculture A1 zoning district would require a rezoning request that would come before this board for public hearing and would require notification to property owners and so forth, as we normally do with rezoning requests. Staff does believe that the policies have been met and the conditions have changed since this property is no longer a school, and as I said, it's not even is not envisioned to be owned by the county anymore and to be sold. So we feel like the conditions have changed in order to allow that change in the designation. The Planning Commission met and discussed this request and had a public hearing on September 11th, and they recommended by a vote of 7-0 to recommend this change from civic land use designation to mixed use designation for this particular piece of property. So that's all I have on that one. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have on this request.
Any questions to the board on this?
Pretty clear.
No.
And these were the only two requests that we received in August as part of that cycle for comprehensive plan amendments. So.
All right. We do have two people signed up for this public hearing, and the first one is Bennett Teets, and if you'll come up and you'll have 5 minutes. State your name and address, please.
Thanks. My name is Bennett Teets. I live at 3014 Lancaster Drive in Blacksburg. I have property that adjoins the school property that's in question here. and I'm also a member of the board of the Northwest Montgomery Village Center Foundation. As you know, the foundation's been working for several years to see that the old Prices Fork School and the property are used for village center purposes. Of course, I understand the financial plight of the county and its need to sell the property. And to do that, I understand the need to change the designation from civic to mixed use. I understand that. At the same time, I trust that the county will not allow uses of the property that are not in keeping with the Prices Forks Village Comprehensive Plan. And in particular, I trust that it will not support subsidized or low-income housing, as I don't see the consistency of that with the county's desire to have a stream of revenue from that property or with the needs of the community. So that's my input. In passing, I'd like to thank the county for keeping the property mowed and looking good shape over the past several months. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Teets. And our second speaker is Heather Pettis. And again, you'll have 5 minutes. State your name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Heather Pettis. I live at 1858 Oil Well Road in Blacksburg. I'm new to the area as an adult, but I actually grew up in Prices Fork, went to Prices Fork Elementary School, and I recently purchased property in the historic district in Prices Fork with the intent to preserve the building that exists there, to bring it back to its original life and the community life there. Since moving back, I actually came from Richmond, the city of Richmond, in historic Churchill, and spent a lot of time in an 1855 home and trying to build up that community, that house, working with the school system there to encourage people to promote going to their local elementary. And I spent much of my time worrying about that neighborhood and thought, why am I not at home worrying about my own neighborhood where I grew up? So I came back to what we call Honey Pond. And the reason why I wanted to come tonight to talk to you is that I'm really concerned about the mixed use without understanding the intent of that property. It is a large property. I'm concerned about what could happen there if we're not watching the development of that piece of land. It could make or break the village concept. And that's what my main concern is just ensuring that, along with Mr. Teets, about the alignment with the village context. So I also would like to propose that the historic designation to incorporate the school as part of the historic district, that be approved before you change it to mixed use. That is an incentive, a development incentive, and I think it also helps give us some sense of security on the intent of use for that property. I'd also like you to consider the land in the back for a conservation easement. I also understand that money talks, and conservation easements are not so great for that. The other thing I just wanted to say is the county can really capitalize on what makes Prices Fork Village unique, and so when changing the designation, think about how that property, in alignment with all of the other buildings in the historic district, together can make a unique community experience that we can really capitalize on, and we can bring the community together and really grow it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's everybody that we have signed up for this public hearing. If there's anybody who would like to speak, please come forward and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Andrea Sharp Robinson, and you knew I had to be here at this. That's right. I live at 4261 Prices Fork Road, right next door to the old Prices Fork Elementary School. So, about 9 years ago, I was fortunate enough to move to Prices Fork, and I worked with a group of citizens that helped create that comprehensive village plan. That was a plan for the future, for 2025. We're at 2013 now. So we had a good idea then, it's a good idea now. I've spoken to several of you, you know I'm back in school, working in education, And as Dewey would say, the notion of care is inquiry, and caring is a sense of fondness. So I have a fondness for this area. I hope you have a fondness for your county and for this area. You have a sense of looking after the county. I hope you have a sense for looking out after what goes in Price's Fork, and that you'll pay attention and be mindful to what you select to put in there. I too understand growing pains. I understand the county had things, extraordinary things happen, and we have to cover those costs. And we have built some wonderful, fine, beautiful schools that my children have had the benefit of going to. But growing pains can be good and bad. They can hurt and they can help. Our county needs to remember, and you as the Board of Supervisors need to remember, that growing pains can be good also. I respect the need for growth, like I said, but I hope that you will respect the area that you're making a change, that you will care for a settlement that's been there over 150 years, that you will think about how we will grow and be mindful of the mixed use designation that you have given it. We want what is best. I know that some refer to us as a leg, as a part of the body of the county, and you have to take care of the leg as well as the body. We're all together in this. I'm afraid that if you select just to your purpose of covering a budget, that you will ignore the rest, that you will forget about the past, you'll forget about the current, and you won't look to a future. So in your plans with mixed use, I hope that you will think about what is best for the county for the future as well. So.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this? And your name and address, and you'll have 5 moments, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Berg. I live at 2931 Weatherly Court in the Price's Fork area. I too grew up in Price's Fork. I moved away for a few years. I had some kids and decided I needed to get back to the town and get close to my parents, so I convinced my husband to leave a tenure track position at a university in Pennsylvania to move back to Price's Fork. So I feel like I'm another example of people who love the Price's Fork area and are committed to coming back and doing some positive things for the area. I want to point that out to you, Mr. Brown, that we love that Price's Fork area, and we're doing a lot to, we're committed to pointing out the historical significance of the area and maintaining that. My concern for the mixed-use area, I think, is in line with some of the other comments that others have made, is that I know that, as Mr. McMahon pointed out, that it is a living document and it can change, but I do hope that those changes will keep in mind the concept that the group of us who got together to try to put together the village plan had in mind, and I would like to see continue there as best possible. Another concern I have is that there has been discussion that there might be some low-income housing that might be designated there. I guess my thought about that is I know that there's a development that is going on Merrimack Road, and I think about the impact that that's going to have on the elementary school. It's a beautiful school, it's new, it's wonderful, thank you, but it's already got a very high percentage of free or reduced lunch students, and I just think about what happens to, what happens to a school when you change the dynamics that significantly, if that's the type of housing that you're thinking about putting in that area. A lot of the parents in the area now very much support that school still, even though our kids have grown up and they don't go there. I still contribute my box tops there, and I know other families make contributions and contribute Christmas baskets for families in need. So I just want you to know that we do support that community. We're very fond of it. We don't have any intentions of moving, and we are, basically concerned about bringing in whatever mixed use would involve, something that can be supportive for the growth and continued development of the families that are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Come forward, please. Name and address.
I'm J.D. Robinson. I live at 4261 Price's Fork Road, which is right beside the elementary school. I know Miss Perkins' son, we used to play together when I was that tall. And Bill Brown's known me since I was about that tall. And I know Chris Tuxton, he was about that tall, so I know some of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have some certain concerns about changing the designation. Even though mixed use might work out in the end, I think the fact that that school is designated civic is a good thing, because that part of Price's Fork has been a civic area for years and years. That's where people used to gather, come together. The Price's Fork Fair is across the street. I'm sure they've even had plans of trying to work something on the other property later on to make it a little bigger. And it's always been a really good thing to have that area there. The green space is wonderful. People still use it, even though the current school isn't there anymore. People still walk the track. They play on the playground. A lot of them actually feel more comfortable coming there and doing those things than they do the new school, just kind of the way it's fenced off and gated off. So we like it as a civic area. Serves the community well. I hope that Bill, you take into account that a lot of the folks that live around there want to continue to use that area. I know you have an RFP, and hopefully something good can come out of that in terms of keeping it really similar to what it is now. We like it, we enjoy it. I think a lot of people in the community do. And if you do go mixed use, please keep that in mind, to keep it something that works for everybody, and that the community, gets something out of it. And we know you guys need the revenue. That's understandable, but it is a civic place that's been there for years, and we'd like to try to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close this public hearing. Thank you. All right, the next public hearing is a rezoning request for Gary Hopper. Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shifting gears a little bit, this is an actual rezoning, so this is actually a consideration of changing the zoning on a particular piece of property. This property is at 1534 Gallimore Street, which is in the Plum Creek area, the Reiner Magisterial District. The property lies in an area that's a lot of mixed lot sizes and mixture of housing types between manufactured homes and single-family homes, some duplexes, so it's a mixture of residential. The lots in the area, a lot of the lots in the area are currently zoned agriculture A1. There is some general business zoning across the street, which we'll see on the map in just a minute, but this is the vicinity map, which kind of shows the Plum Creek area and where this property is located. The two properties outlined in yellow are the two properties that are under consideration for rezoning to go to A1, from A1 to residential multifamily. This building here has been here a while, and the proposal is to convert that to a triplex, so have 3 dwelling units within this, and then build a new duplex unit on this parcel over here outside of the floodway. This is just the zoning map that shows all the parcels in white are
Excuse me,
zoned
Steve.
agricultural.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just go back one? This was my concern, so maybe you can clear it up right now.
Sure.
Is that where is their proposed
It would go
duplex?
right here.
Okay. So they are taking into consideration the floodway?
Correct. They're not going to build within the floodplain.
Okay.
And they may actually do an adjustment of those lot lines as well to give them a little bit more room. So this is the zoning map, which shows those general business parcels that I mentioned that are in red along Route 11. So the proposal is to rezone those 2 parcels, which is a total of 1.6 acres, from agriculture A1 to residential multifamily, and this would allow 2 multifamily dwelling units. One would be a duplex, one would be a triplex. Just some background, this building has had a couple different uses in it, and Mr. Hopper purchased the property recently as part of a foreclosure on the property, not realizing that some permits had not been obtained along the way for the use. So as part of this proposal and this request, Mr. Hopper has proffered that he will bring the building into compliance with all the building code requirements for that triplex unit. Some of the impacts that staff considered and reviewed were the transportation impacts. No commercial entrance is required. There is a small area of pavement, and I think there's a picture here. It kind of has some pavement that's actually in the right-of-way. The VDOT requested that pavement be removed from their right-of-way, and the applicant has agreed to do that. And other than that, VDOT has no issues with their proposal. The one thing they didn't want was an entrance on Route 11, and that's not being proposed. And I believe it's also proffered that they would not put an entrance on Route 11. Infrastructure, it would be served by PSA Water and Sewer. And Mr. Frank from the PSA has reviewed it, and he's sent them a letter which kind of explains some of the conditions they have to meet to serve those two structures, and that's been included in your packet. Schools, the schools have indicated that it's in the Auburn Strand, and that has the potential to add 3 students per school. And there is capacity in those schools per the school system. Emergency Services also reviewed the request, and the one comment that the Emergency Services Coordinator had was about the proposed duplex, to make sure that there was emergency response vehicles would have access to the rear of that building if there was to be a fire, and they've incorporated that into the concept plan. There's also a fire hydrant nearby which would serve that property as well. Looking at the comprehensive plan, this particular piece of property is designated as village expansion as part of the Plum Creek Village, and then it's even further defined as medium density residential. So this proposal is in compliance with that future land use designation. And you can see here that all this area in orange is also designated as medium density residential, so it is in keeping with the area. They're proposing a maximum of 5 dwelling units for both parcels, for the 2 parcels, and our zoning to RM1 would allow up to 8 townhouse type structures and actually up to 12 multifamily structures per acre. The village density calls for 4 units per acre, so that would really, in this case, would allow more than what's being proposed here. So there is a proffer that sets that limit at 5 dwelling units, which would be the 1 triplex and the duplex, for a total of 5 living units. So there is really not a significant change to the existing surrounding land uses. This is just some of the photos of the property. This is the area where the duplex would be constructed. Some of the adjoining properties. This is the floodplain area, and it's proposed that those trees would be maintained in that area and not disturbed. This is that vacant lot. This is the existing structure, which has been a church and a daycare center and the various different things through the years. Just some more pictures of the area, the existing parking and so forth. Staff has received 2 calls about the proposal, and really most of that was just garnering additional information about what the proposal was about. There may be some more interested citizens here tonight to speak. But Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 11th, and there were no public comments during that meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning to residential multifamily with proffered conditions, and I won't read all of them, but there is a concept development plan which has been proffered, the maximum of 5 dwelling units, some of the access issues that I discussed earlier, including no access from Route 11, and then also preserving some of that existing vegetation along Plum Creek and along Route 11 has also been proffered. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you have, and John Neal is also the agent for this property owner as well, and he may have some things to share also.
Okay, any questions of the board? None? Okay. And Mr. Neal, you have signed up again for this public hearing?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning or Board of Supervisors. I hope I go
We
better.
have promoted, huh?
My name is John Neal. I'm an engineer with Gay and Neal in Christiansburg, 1260 Radford Street. I'm here tonight representing Mr. Hopper. And as Steve touched on, I think he really covered the entirety of the proposal. But one of the things that he mentioned was Mr. Hopper bought this property at auction. And it was previously being utilized. It's been utilized as a church, and then it was a church with a daycare center attached. And then the church went away and it operated as a daycare center for a while. And then it was operated and sold at auction and advertised as a triplex residential structure. Mr. Hopper, unfortunately, purchased that property, and then as he delved into doing the actual improvements to the building and things like that, went down to the county staff and found out that it was being illegally used as a triplex apartment structure. So our goal in this rezoning really was to try to effectively make Mr. Hopper whole based on what he thought he had purchased. So the existing structure that's there, we would like to be able to utilize it as a triplex. His request really is going to tremendously improve the upkeep of the property. If you saw some of those pictures, he's going to invest a significant amount of money in improving that structure and partitioning it out. We went inside it with the Planning Commission, and it could definitely stand some improvement, which he is moving forward and would like to do. Additionally, because of some of the limits, we were just going to take care of the triplex. However, the RM1 zoning requires a minimum acreage to be rezoned. The district size has to be a certain acreage. And so we included the parcel that is adjacent to Route 11, and we're proposing a duplex on that property. But at the same time, we have proffered a maximum of 5 units on the entire property so that you know exactly what you're getting with the rezoning, as well as our conceptual plan, which I hope you've seen a copy of that and it was in your package. We are in line with the comprehensive plan for village expansion, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you have or if you have any concerns. I think the last we had heard that we'd received a couple of calls from neighbors, and I think they were in favor of anything that improved the appearance of the property, and as long as it was not manufactured housing, which we've proffered that we're doing a duplex in the existing triplex.
Any questions, comments? Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close this public hearing. The next is a group of 9 public hearings, and they represent minor changes. Number 4 addresses minor inconsistencies in the zoning ordinance, and number 5 through 9 presents small state enabling legislative changes that need to be incorporated into the county zoning ordinance. And I will turn it over to Mr. McMahon.
Well, Mr. Chair, you need to open the public hearing for each one. So you will need to start with number 4, and then I'll address the change, and then see if there's any speakers, and then if there aren't, close the hearing, and then open number 5. And just like you would normally do by reading the ordinance title.
All right, we'll start with number 4, which is an ordinance amendment, Chapter 10, entitled Zoning, Section 10-22. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this public hearing? Is that the question?
I'll address the change, and then we'll see if there's any.
I'm having a hard time hearing. My ears are plugged up.
You'll address the change
Okay.
for each one, and then you can open it up.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Public hearing number 4 is a proposed amendment to Section 1022 of the county zoning ordinance. And this, when we were doing our annual review of the zoning ordinance, we noticed that there was an inconsistency in this section, which is the section that describes what uses are allowed by right and by special use permit in conservation district. And what we noticed was that the sawmill temporary was listed as a by right use, and it was also listed as a right that's allowed by special use permit, which is inconsistent. And so what we think happened was probably some type of typo when that ordinance was done at some point back in the future and back in the past. And so the way it should read, we think, and this is what the change is that sawmill temporary will remain as a by right use. And what sawmill temporary is defined as is a portable sawmill that's located on private property that processes timber that's cut only either on the land that the sawmill is on or adjoining land. And so, and then sawmill without the temporary tag will then be allowed only in SUP, and a sawmill that's not temporary is defined as a permanent sawmill that's located for processing timber from everywhere, not only the place where the sawmill is, but also from any other land And so that use would have a little bit more of an impact, and so that would come before you as a special use permit. So that's what this change is doing. It's very small, and it's because of an inconsistency that's there. So right now, Steve tells me there are no sawmill uses in C1, but there could be in the future. So if there's any questions, I can answer.
Any questions of the board? Is there anybody who would like to address this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll move on to number 5, an ordinance amendment, Chapter 10, entitled Zoning, Section 10-4, 2A.
Yes, this is a change that's required under the state enabling legislation. There was a change by the General Assembly. Right now, localities are required to allow what's defined or termed a temporary family health care structure. Localities are required to allow these as accessory uses on any property that's zoned for single-family detached dwellings that are owned or occupied by a caregiver. And what these allow now is like a caregiver. They're limited in size up to 300 square feet, and there's these what they call healthcare cottages. We don't have any in the county presently, but state law requires you to allow these as accessory use. Well, the definition has changed, where now you have to allow not only one person to stay there, but if a couple is married, then they can stay there together, so long as you meet the other requirements, meaning that one of the people on there is either mentally or physically impaired and needs assistance. And also the definition changed now, where once they no longer meet that definition, or in the cottage can no longer remain as accessory use, they have now up to 60 days to remove it, not 30 days. And those are all required by state law, and we have to make those changes to our zoning ordinance.
Okay. Any questions of the board on this one? Would anybody in the audience like to address this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll move on.
All right, public hearing number 6 is a very minor change. It's a change, but we're amending section 1043.5, which is we're adding cemeteries to the list of uses that are required to have a minimum of 10% tree canopy plan that's shown on their final site plan. And this also is required by state enabling legislation. The legislation that allows you to provide or require tree canopy plans lists commercial and industrial uses as uses that are required to have 10%. And now the code has recently changed to add cemeteries to that list. I'm not sure why the General Assembly changed that, but they did. And I'm sure something happened somewhere else in the state that require that. And so we're also required to make that change.
Okay. Any questions of the board? Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this public hearing? And seeing no one, we will close this public hearing. Number 7, Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, number 7 is a change also to the zoning ordinance, and it's dealing with section 1051, which concerns Board of Zoning Appeals. And what this change is to clarify the voting requirement for certain actions that the BZA takes. What the code needed to be changed is to clarify that any time the BZA is considering an appeal from an administrative ruling made by the zoning administrator, that state law requires a concurring vote of a majority of the membership and not a majority of the quorum that's present to reverse any decision of the zoning administrator. And so we added language clarifying that any other vote taken by the BZA is a concurring vote of the quorum that's present. Right now we have a BZA that's made up of 5 members. So we always have to have at least 3 to have a quorum. However, if they're voting on whether they should overturn or reverse a decision made by your zoning administrator, then you would need a majority of the membership, meaning you're going to always need 3 votes at least. And so if there's only 3 there, all 3 have to vote yes. A 2-to-1 vote wouldn't reverse. So that's the significance of that change. And it's required by the state enabling legislation that covers BZAs. So there's really no discretion in this change.
Okay.
One more thing, public hearing number 9 is related to this change, and we'll talk about that. It actually changes that voting change.
Okay, any questions on number 8? Anybody like to speak to this public hearing? Let's move on.
Public hearing number 8. I apologize for all these changes, but most of these are blamed on the General Assembly. This is a change in zoning ordinance of 1054-1, and what this is adding is right now when we do zoning, whenever there's a zoning amendment, meaning there's a change in the zoning ordinance or a zoning change, the planning director is required to send those applications. He's required to refer those to any town, counties, or state agency whose comments are necessary or desirable for a full or appropriate review of those merits. That's what the code requires now. State law requires that, and we have that in 1054. Well, due to a lot it's basically, this is coming out of Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, but there were some situations down there where the military installations were being affected by some rezonings, and so the generals, and they've complained about those, and so the General Assembly has now added that one of these agencies or not just agencies, but the planning director is required now to send any of these zoning amendments also to any military installation that may require, whose comments may be required for any necessary rezoning or zoning amendment. And so for us, that would entail the arsenal. And so anytime there's a zoning change that may affect the arsenal, the planning director will send those to them to get their comments. They have 30 days to comment on it, and so that's what this change is, and it's required by state law.
And anybody here would like to address this public hearing? Any board members? Move on, Mr.
All right, the final change that we have that's required by state enabling changes related to public hearing number 7. We talked about the voting, clarifying the voting of the BZA. The 1055 actually deals with the voting requirements for the BZA, and so the change has in there that it requires a majority of the full membership. It also, the other change in this is that under state law, it used to have where anytime the BZA considered a variance, they had to make a finding that a hardship was being arise because of this, and that the hardship was approaching what they call confiscation. Well, the General Assembly took away that, and in essence made it a little bit easier to grant variances, and they took away that requirement, and so we've thus show that as a strike through on our ordinance now. No longer do you have to find that it approaches confiscation. And then the last change is the state law required us to put in some language on what happens when there's a tie vote. And the tie vote would be, according to state law, is that it would then be carried over to the next meeting. And so that's what those changes are. And they're all required by state law changes.
Okay. And any board members have any questions? Anybody in the audience would like to speak to this public hearing? And seeing no one, we'll move on to number 10.
All right, number 10 and number 11 are changes that are not related to changes in state law. These are changes that are being proposed by the Planning Commission and the Planning. The first change is an ordinance that's creating amateur radio tower as a defined use under our zoning ordinance. This was not there before, and this is being proposed as defined as a structure on which an antenna is installed for the purpose of transmitting and receiving amateur radio signals, erected, operated, and maintained by an amateur radio operator licensed by the FCC. We discovered when dealing with some tower and antenna issues with commercial carriers that we did not provide for amateur radio tower providers, and so that's why we're doing this change. The proposed ordinance also allows these amateur radio towers as a permitted use in A1, C1, rural residential, R1, 2, and 3, general business, community business, manufacturing 1, manufacturing light, planned industrial use, PUD, both commercial and residential, and it allows by special use permit in residential, multifamily, PUD, T&D, and then planned mobile home development. However, they all come under the following requirements. The towers cannot be any higher than 75 feet. If they are higher than 75 feet, then they have to go through a special use permit process. If they're 75 feet or lower, then they can be put up by right in those districts I listed. We also have setback requirements for the tower that are equal to the distance of the height of the tower, so they don't fall on any structures. And also, the towers can only be located in side and rear yards, and also towers can only have a natural metal color, non-reflective, and a neutral finish in order to diminish any adverse view that may occur because of these towers. And also in your packet, there's a letter from the National Association of Amateur Radio organization, and they're in support of the proposed ordinance. And I think we had a speaker at our last meeting that talked about it and about how they supported this change. And so this is a very this ordinance is not very restrictive at all. It allows this in most uses. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay, is there any questions to board members? Anybody in the audience would like to speak to this public hearing? And seeing no one, we'll go on to number 11.
All right, the last one is an ordinance that's amending the definition of what we currently have under a park and ride lot. We noticed when looking at that definition that it only talked about parking your car at a park and ride lot in order to go to work, and that was not the intent. The intent was also to allow any other short-term traveling purposes that may arise, and so we've changed that to include other short-term traveling purposes, not only going to work, but maybe going to school, going sightseeing, shopping, running errands, or otherwise traveling on a short-term process. That these park and ride lots, that's the purpose of those, and that's in the definition, so that changes there. Also, they came about and they looked at where these lots were allowed by right, and so what planning staff recommended and planning commission approved was that if there's less than 50, or if there's 50 spaces or less, these park and ride lots would be allowed by right in general business, community business, manufacturing, PUD, T&D infill, planned industrial, and PUD commercial and residential. If there's more than 50 spaces, then you would have a special use permit requirement. They're also allowed only by special use permit in A1, C1, all the residential districts that we have. And also they've proposed in this change supplemental regulations that attach to these park and ride lots, and these are the ones you would see for any other parking lot, meaning there's access requirements, surfacing requirements, and marking, lighting, setbacks, and then landscaping and screening.
Okay. Any questions of the board?
Yeah, I've got one, and I don't know. Is there anything that can be done with that to not allow parking within so many feet of a school?
Steve, did you hear that? You mean having a park and ride lot so close to a school? Is that what you're talking about?
Right, that you just can't have one.
Right.
That should be something in there. You know, we've had enough problems and all that to know that that's not a real good idea.
Right.
So we would need something within what you just went over to say that, with the one exception of schools, and you just can't park that close to a school. And I think we should move it on out for a fairly good distance, 500,000 feet away from the school before anybody could park close to it. So that's my opinion. I don't know what everybody else did.
Something to put in.
It's not in there now.
No, yeah. I think that's something we could propose a change when it comes back to the board for consideration. We could add some language maybe addressing that concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing? Seeing no one, we will close our public hearings for the evening. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public address. If there's nobody signed up for a public address, I don't think. No? Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Tom Rutledge. I'm a project manager with Shaw Development. And I just want to say I appreciate all the neighbors' time, effort, and energy, as well as staff and planning commissions on the comprehensive plan amendment for the Ellison Lafayette school site. I don't know if I'm out of line, but I just thought I would ask, with the holiday and everything coming up, the board does not meet again until October 16th. My actual planning commission public hearing for the rezoning request that's coming behind this plan amendment is scheduled for October the 9th. I was curious if there was any way, since there was no opposition tonight and we had a 7-0 vote from Planning Commission, if the board would consider voting on our request tonight, just to make it a little cleaner going through to the Planning Commission public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak? Please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Phyllis Albritton, and I live at 1003 Highland Circle in Blacksburg. And first, I would like to say how exciting it was to see so many of you at the Water Authority dinner the other night. It's a really big happening to have us all get together. You know me. The sooner we all get together, the better. And I do understand the Virginia Tech Foundation's asking for the revenue bonds. I know that you've done it in the past. My hope, again, with concern for our school system, is that possibly you could work with them as well to help them maybe make some kind of contribution to the county for our schools, because I believe they are very instrumental in causing our composite index to be higher relative to many parts of the state, so that this year our public schools were docked $2 million because our composite index was as high as it was. And I've spoken about that before, but that really concerns me. Many of you know better than I, because you've been here around here longer, that we have been losing money at the state level. And this year with $2 million gone, composite index, because of our employment rate, because of our land value, you know, and a lot of that is due to the Virginia Tech Foundation and the Research Center. So I would hope that somehow we could work together and maybe get them to help us, since so many of their people that work there, as well as at Virginia Tech and all, their kids come to our schools, and they come here a lot because of our schools. So I just wanted to push that out there. And anything you can do with the leftover operating budget for us and our children, I would be very appreciative. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to this public address? Seeing no one, we will close the public address session. The next item is addendums, and I don't believe we have any this evening. The next item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Roll call, please.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Paredes?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is new business, and subject A is issuance of revenue bonds by the Economic Development Authority for the Virginia Tech Foundation, Incorporated. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I was wondering if perhaps Carol could just explain kind of the background by this and what's going on here, or Marty, someone. I don't care who it is. I just want somebody to explain.
I'll defer to the county attorney.
Thank you.
I'll defer to Carol. No, what this resolution is doing is asking the Board of Supervisors to approve or allow the issuance of revenue bonds by the EDA on behalf of the Virginia Tech Foundation. The foundation has gone to the EDA, and it's described that, one, they've asked the EDA to issue up to $48 million in revenue bonds, and it's for a list of projects that are listed in your resolution. Part of those projects are in Montgomery County. As you see, they're looking to relocate the Virginia Tech Dairy relocation, which is going from campus to Whitethorn. And then they're also looking to put, some of that money is also going to be used to build a new building at the CRC. And some of that money is also going to be used for foundation projects dealing with what's called the North End Center, which is at Turner Street in Blacksburg. And the other one in the county is for the what's called the Collegiate Square project, and that's on Turner Street. And so that's the money that's going to be spent in Montgomery County. They're also looking to spend some of this money in Rockbridge. They got a farm there they're going to be using for research. They're also looking to buy some land in the city of Roanoke for their medical school. There's also money going to be spent from that $48 million for the city of Alexandria, which is they're looking to put a instructional, looking to build a facility and buy some property in Alexandria for instructional purposes there. And in Arlington County, they're looking to do a research center there. And the reason they have to, the reason this board has to approve it is that a portion of this $48 million is going to be tax exempt, and it can be tax exempt so long as it's being used for the school purposes, not commercial, but for educational purposes. And what I mean by tax exempt, it's exempt from federal income tax. So people who buy their bonds and the money they make on the return of those bonds, they do not have to claim as income tax. And so in doing that, they get a better rate than they would for taxable bonds. So part of this $48 million will be taxable, part will be non-taxable. The portion that will be non-taxable in Montgomery County will be spent on the Virginia Tech Dairy relocation, because that's all has to do with the university and research and agricultural department. And so anytime an EDA is going to issue tax-exempt bonds, that locality that's having the tax-exempt bonds issued in has to approve, and that's why you're being asked to approve. Also, Rockbridge County will also have to approve it, because that portion of the farm that they're buying in Rockbridge will also be part of the tax exempt. So that's why you're required to approve this. The other thing to keep in mind is that the county nor the EDA will have any liability in any of the bonds they issue. The EDA is a vehicle to issue bonds for the foundation, but it's clear in the documents and in this resolution that the EDA nor the county nor the Commonwealth of Virginia have any liability nor any obligation to pay these bonds should they not be paid. They will only be paid by the Virginia Tech Foundation. It doesn't affect our debt limit in any way, none of our debt policies. This has no effect on anything the county does from a financial standpoint.
Just one more question of clarification. This is simply out of me still being new. I guess I can still say that I'm new. Why is the EDA, Montgomery County EDA, they chose a vehicle for the issuance of the bonds? Why does Virginia Tech Foundation come through?
Yeah, maybe the foundation thinks for that. There's representative here.
Hi, I'm Tim Graff. I'm Director of Debt Management with the Virginia Tech Foundation. The reason we're proposing to use the Montgomery EDA, and they've actually approved us using them, is there's 5 different localities that where we have projects that are going in, and it's pretty much a matter of convenience to issue it in one place instead of issuing it in 5 different places. So each locality where we have projects has to individually approve us issuing bonds in that locality through the Montgomery EDA, but it's pretty much just a matter of convenience to just issue it in one place instead of in 5.
If I can add just a little bit more to that, is that the foundation is an organization that's allowed to request this type of bond issuance from economic development authorities or industrial development authorities, and so that's why they go to these authorities, and then he's picked us because we're one of 5 that they're actually looking to spend the money in. So.
Yeah, as a 501c3.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else? Ms. Biggs?
Well, since you're here and you heard Ms. Albritton, this is something that keeps coming up time after time after time. to our board from different citizens asking over and over again about, the land being bought by the foundation and taken out of the tax rolls and et cetera, and then the problem that we have, with trying to fund things. And of course, Virginia Tech is our economic engine, and I fully support, you asking to go through the EDA. I mean, that's something that we've done before. But since you actually did hear that, and I don't know what can really be done about it, but it would be, I don't know if there could ever be a situation where people could sit down at a table and talk about the situation, because the CRC brings in so many people, which really helps our economy, but it also brings in people, like Ms. Albritton said, that are really interested in where their children are going to go to school and how the schools are doing, both test-wise and the whole bit. I don't know if there would be an opening, but since you're here tonight and you did hear that, if you could take that back in some manner. I mean, because, I think there are people here on the board that would be interested, and I'm sure there are people on the school board. If there was ever any way we could have a conversation about maybe something that, I don't know what kind of contribution or how it could be made, but, just some kind of even discussion would be really nice, because I think we're at that point where, I have people ask me all the time, and I'm sure these board members up here have had people ask them.
Yeah, I can certainly bring that back. I would point out that the only tax exempt project that we're doing in the county is in Kentland Farm, which is already a Virginia Tech property, so I don't think it's really being taken off the tax roll in that case, but I can certainly bring it back.
Mr. Tuck?
A couple of things you had mentioned. I understand that the CRC paid approximately $100,000 on the leaseholds, or I guess the tenants paid property taxes in regards to that from the figures that my understanding the staff has been able to put together. But I guess some of my concerns is that, as I understand it, the CRC was to be an incubator for businesses to help them kind of get started, and then they would move out to the community. And I guess when you're taking things back, one of my concerns is that the CRC is becoming a competitor with individuals who are actually paying taxes in industrial parks and buying property and paying the full share. Because on those leaseholds, it's only a portion. And my understanding is the taxable amount on the leaseholds is about $11 million on the property in the CRC, which generates roughly $100,000. Obviously, those buildings are worth a lot more than that. And I understand that they bring in high-paying jobs, and as Mary talked about, the economic engine. But at the same time, when that economic engine is competing against industrial parks that are bringing jobs and paying real estate taxes, I have a lot of concerns and about how that seems to be evolving from that first startup, which was the plan for the CRC, to being a long-term where businesses will be located for decades without paying real estate taxes.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to add, on the other hand, none of us would be here if it weren't for Virginia Tech, probably. And so, the way I see it is maybe there's a time now that, I think it just involves maybe just talking, that's discussion, understanding, both sides, because that's how you bring people together, is when you actually understand from each other's viewpoint. And I wanted to bring it to your attention, and I'm glad Ms. Albritton spoke tonight, and the concerns that Mr. Tuck has, that's another whole area that we're always asked about. And maybe there just needs to be some understanding on both sides about what's out there, so we can better explain it when we go out in the community. But thank you for listening. All that, I know that's not your job, but since you were here.
You never want to come back again.
Anybody else?
No. I just want to reiterate what Ms. Biggs has said. I'm Annette Perkins, and Ms. Albritton lives in my district, and she's often been concerned, as we all are, about the very issue which we brought up. And I know in the past we have several times had some discussions with people from Virginia Tech about how we could, is there any way that we could rectify this? Because I know that in some other places where we have state-supported schools in Virginia, they have worked out agreements and contributions. And so it would be very much to the benefit of the children and to the people of Montgomery County if there was some way that this could happen. And I understand what you were saying, because Kentland already belongs to Virginia Tech, and obviously they bought that, and that's off the tax rolls. And the land that is being used for the Jerry bonds and those places right now will be used and remain on Virginia Tech land. Part of it is due to the expansion of the airport, and so that's probably the whole reason that all this has been moved. However, I understand Virginia Tech did have some plans a long time ago to move these dairy barns out to where Kentland is. But again, I just reiterate what Ms. Biggs and what Mr. Tuck has said, because it does not seem to me to be crooked to have people who are not on taxable land in competition with the community. So thank you very much, and I'm sure you won't ever want to come back again. Please do help us out. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Anybody else have any comments? Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Levis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is Subject B, School Operating Fund Carryover for FY13 year-end balance. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I'd like to talk about it a little bit in regards to some of the issues, and I know that we've got some of the school staff here just to kind of go over. I have some questions about some of the items.
Okay. You wanna-
That's fine. And I guess I'll start off with the, in regards to, I know that from our joint meetings, you were hoping for $2 million to take care of maintenance, and typically the rollover funds addressed a lot of the maintenance issues. And I noticed planned expenditures for unencumbered carryover, and starting off with the restore the full-time in-school suspension at Shawsville and Auburn, and then restore the Montgomery County Public Schools participation in the Governor's School Program. And I guess I'll start with the Governor's School Program. I thought that an individual had come forward through the school foundation to pay for the Governor's School.
The individual donor that's making the contribution to the school system makes the contribution on the basis of the fact that the school division continues to fully fund the Governor's School. So then that gift goes to the school division for having funded it. The request here, we reinstated, well, we had a lot of discussion, as you'll remember, when we had a very bad budget year about discontinuing Montgomery County Public Schools participation in Governor's School at all. And that did not happen, and that's very good that it didn't. But we did cut the summer program only, and it's about $8,000 is the total value of it. So although we have the gift that came as a result of funding regular Governor's School, we had not funded the summer program or refunded the summer program.
To maintain that gift, is that gift contingent on the summer program being funded?
No, it is not. It was contingent on the regular school program.
And in regards to, I guess there's a lot of different things here about adding staff, but is it these plans to make these staff members permanent?
No, I took a different tack this year than I usually take. We have some very definite instructional needs in Montgomery County Public Schools, and many of the things that we have put into this request are to help us support enhancing our math program. From the moment that they were first mentioned to our school board, and as I present them to you here this evening, it's with the full understanding that it's one-time only funding, and that to be able to continue some of those things, we would have to fund them from the regular operating fund in the next year.
Could I ask just a
Please,
follow-up?
please.
So could you maybe explain for the people who aren't here why you're focusing on the math?
Yes. Year before last, Virginia instituted some very rigorous math standards. And whenever you change a test or change the content that you're teaching, you can generally see a dip in scores. The math dip has been phenomenal, not only in Montgomery County schools, but across the state. And in fact, this year, the number of schools that do not have full accreditation was quadrupled, many of them because of the issue with the increased standards in mathematics. So we are basically pulling out all the stops. We're evaluating our instructional materials. We're using math coaches to support teacher instruction and familiarity with the more difficult standards, and much of the request is very much focused on mathematics instruction.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just in regards to meeting that goal of the $2 million, and I understand that some of it's encumbered in the $191,000, and then you also have $990,000, where I guess you bought things, but the bills haven't come in, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and I'm part of it, I'm clarifying for folks who are looking at this to make sure they understand it. But roughly, there is not about $250,000 that's unencumbered for the
$239,144 that's unencumbered money.
All right. And I apologize, I didn't have a chance to look at your board's meeting. Was there a discussion about trying to use that money to meet those critical needs in our meetings that they took place to address some of the maintenance issues that were discussed?
The board has had a great interest in using some of the money for capital improvements, and when the carryover was $1.5 million, $2 million, $2.5 million unencumbered, a large piece of it was set aside for capital maintenance projects. But when you're down to the point that you have $239,000, you have to look first at your instructional program, and at the moment, that is something that we really need to use the funds for. We know that we have unfunded capital needs, but when the Carnotech report indicates a need for about $2 million worth of capital maintenance over every year for the next several years, I believe through the next 10 years, then this $239,000 doesn't even scratch the surface. And if you look at it in light of the fact that we now have 3 high schools that are accredited warned, I need to put the money in instruction. The most important thing we do is the teaching and learning in the classrooms. Our schools are safe. We do have some things we need to do. 3 of them will celebrate their 50th anniversary this year. We've got Harding, who's going to have a 50th. We've got Christiansburg Elementary and Gilbert Lincoln.
I attended Harding for his first year, so it's only his 40th. I think. So,
I stand corrected, okay.
I was in first grade class to go through.
And it was never the same after that.
Okay.
I would just like to add, about the testing and all of that, and reading the articles in the newspaper when I got back into town from being out of town. I mean, it's the incredible amount of stress that is put on the school system to survive due to the testing that's required. And the stress goes from the top all the way down into the classroom, and it even affects students. And so I can understand your request for the math. I mean, I really understand that. It's just we're living in a very and this is just, my personal observation, a very hard time as far as the accountability goes. And so I can see the stress that you're facing and the school board's facing and everyone within the system to try to get this brought back up. Not that it really went I mean, the problem is they keep raising the standards, and so you keep fighting to get to the top. And as soon as you try, when you think you're almost there, it's pushed down again, so.
It's a moving target.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
So I think that's part of the issue.
Anybody else?
I don't have any further questions, just I didn't know if there was any discussion.
Any discussion? Okay, we've been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
No.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Lewis?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 no.
I always appreciate your support and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. I do have 2 staff members with me. If it's okay with you, I'd like to introduce them. First of all, I have Dr. John Staten. I'm not sure that you've met Dr. Staten. He's our new Assistant Superintendent for Operations. John, if you would stand. He's been with us since June and is a quick study, and we're delighted to have him with us. Also, I have Katie Miano, our comptroller, with us, and Katie is giving me Finance 101, 102, and 103 on a daily basis. So I thank Katie always. And again, I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution of appreciation for Gerald W. Higgins, New River Valley Water Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Very deserving.
I was going to say, this took the words right out of my mouth.
And I think we had a real good send-off for him last Thursday night, but he'll be around for a little while yet. But it was very nice that our board was invited to that reception last Thursday, and everybody was able to come that could. So, do I have roll call, please?
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Lewis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, now we're going to go into a work session. Do I have a motion?
So
Yes.
moved.
Second.
Sorry.
We can vote for it, but I would like to have a break.
That's reasonable.
Okay.
We can vote you out.
Take a 5-minute break.
We can take on them 5 minutes.
Do we need to vote on the motion because it's on the floor?
Yes, it is. We do need to vote on that.
Keep you straight.
Oh, well, thank you.
Vote on the motion first.
Well, it's on the floor.
To a work session.
Here. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel? Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Lewis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Is our emergency operations plan.
Mr. Chair, we would ask if we could defer that item until the next meeting. Our emergency services coordinator couldn't be here tonight, so if we could, please, we'll take that off this work session and include it in a future work session.
Okay, is that okay with the board? Do I need any kind of motion, Marty?
No, we can
No.
just move on.
Okay. All right, the next item is consolidated site hours of operation, and that's in tab O. And did you want to pick that up?
Yeah, let me pick it up from here. Mr. Chair, several weeks ago, I guess, the board had mentioned the possibility of looking at the issue of reducing the hours at the consolidated sites and possibly generating some savings from that. So from that, our budget manager, Mark Magruder, and I see him way in the back, our general services director, Steve Phillips, got together and looked at some ways that we may be able to reduce hours, continue operations, and what that savings could be. So staff has tonight 7 different ways of looking at it. There are about 7 different scenarios that Mark's worked through the numbers on. And we're not making a recommendation of either of those 1 through 7, but merely presenting the information to you tonight and letting you have whatever discussion you'd like to have and give us some guidance about whether or not this is a topic you want to pursue. And if so, is there a particular option or variation of some option that you would like to pursue in this? So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mark Magruder and let him run through the analysis he's done on this issue.
Okay, I'll give you a little background information.
As you know, there are currently 10 staffed consolidated collection sites at various locations throughout the county. I'm not going to read these locations off to you, but basically they're strategically located throughout the county to pretty much cover all parts of the county as far as consolidated site services. The county also operates one open green box site in Allegheny Springs. In the past, hours were reduced on selected holidays to contain costs, and of course over the last few weeks we've done a more detailed analysis to determine the amount of savings that we could generate under some different scenarios, and I'm going to go over those with you. So our current site hour structure, Monday through Friday, during the summer months, we're operating those sites 12 hours a day. During the winter months, during daylight savings time, we're operating those sites 11 hours a day. On Saturdays, they're open 10 hours, and then on Sunday, they're open 6 hours. There's a list of the holiday closures. Currently, we're closed on New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Christmas Day, Martin Luther King Day, Independence Day, Columbus Day, and Thanksgiving Day. The green box site is open at all holidays except for Christmas and Thanksgiving. So we wanted to look at, how much does it actually cost to staff the consolidated sites, and how many number of hours are actually being worked. And under the current schedule, each site is operating 3,771 hours per year. If you add the 10 sites together, you get roughly 38,000 total hours that are currently being worked. The average cost per hour for wages to staff each site is $11.87. And the average cost per site per year to staff is $44,775. We currently have 30 site attendants plus 2 alternates available to staff the 10 sites, and each site requires 3 site attendants to staff per year. So the total cost for the part-time staffing of the 10 sites, which includes benefits, is $447,750. I want to point out that this is not the total cost of operating solid waste collections, which is about $1.8 million. This is just the cost to staff these individual sites. So it does not include any of the fixed costs associated with running the trucks, truck maintenance, or the tipping fees associated with getting rid of the trash and garbage that is collected at those sites.
Trash is expensive.
So we sat down with general services staff. We looked at 7 different options for reduced hours. And of course, we started with option 1, which would be the current schedule with no changes. Option 2 would be to close all day on Tuesday and Wednesday at all sites. And the reason that was selected was that Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be the lowest volume days of any other day during the week. And so under that scenario, there'd be 0 hours on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Option 3, we close all afternoons during the week at all sites. Essentially, we would operate 6 hours from Sunday through Friday and 10 hours on Saturday. Option 4 would be open 6 hours per day, every day of the week at all sites. And then after we looked at those scenarios, we said, okay, what if we did the same 3 scenarios, but we excluded the high volume sites? And so we looked at the tonnage that was actually collected at those sites, and it turns out that Plum Creek and Reiner were the 2 highest tonnage sites, and so we excluded them just to get an idea of what it would be under those same 3 scenarios. So again, close all day on Tuesdays and Wednesdays except the high volume sites, close all afternoons except the high volume sites, and then open 6 hours a day. So this chart shows the first 4 options, and what it illustrates is under option 1, you have the cost in yellow, the total number of hours that are currently being worked under each scenario, and then what the savings would be. And of course, under the first scenario, the total cost is $447,750, approximately 38,000 hours. And of course, there would be no savings under the current schedule. Option 2, if we close all day on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you can see that our total cost will drop to $309,000. We would have 26,000 hours, and we would have $138,000 in savings. Option 3, if you close on the afternoons during the week, we would have $278,315 on the cost. 23,000 hours that would be worked and savings of 169,000. Option 4, if we're open 6 days a week, total cost would be 253,000. We'd work 21,360 hours and we'd have savings of 194,000. We ran those same scenarios. We excluded the high volume sites. If we look at option 5, total cost would be 336,000. We work 28,000 hours. Savings would be $110,000 a year. The option 6, we'd have a total cost of 312,000. We'd work 26,000 hours, and we'd have savings of 136,000. The last option, option 7, if we were open 6 hours a day, except at the high volume sites, we'd have a total cost of 292,000. We'd work 24,000 hours, and we'd have a total savings of 155,000. So to give you the conclusions, essentially I just summed up the information that we had on those charts, and we have the total number of hours that would be worked under each scenario, what the total cost would be, and what savings would be generated under each scenario. And should the board elect to reduce site hours, staff recommends that we do a trial period to determine if future adjustments are necessary. At this point, I'm finished with my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions, and General Services staff are here to answer any questions you might have about operations.
Okay. Mr. Gabriel.
Just a quick question for clarification for right now. So if I'm understanding the presentation correctly, that the only way that we're going to realize savings here is basically by cutting wages, cutting salary.
Exactly. I mean, there's a certain amount of fixed costs that you're going to have one way or the other. So the amount of trash is going to be collected is not really going to change. You still have the citizens who are utilizing the sites. It's just going to be that they're going to be using those sites at different times because of the schedule that would be open. So, for example, you wouldn't see a decrease in tonnage, so your tipping fees are not going to go down. What would go down would be the number of hours that would be open at those sites. So you would have to cut wages in order to realize any savings.
So there's no estimation of reduced tonnage, even if it's closed several extra days a week or anything like that?
Well, what would happen is, we did not estimate that there would be any decrease in tonnage because people are still going to generate the same amount of trash. It's just that they will be taking that trash more often on certain days than they were previously. In other words, instead of having every day of the week open to them, they would have only certain times. So you would see more people coming to the consolidated site during that smaller window when they're open.
In theory, yes. Okay.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I've got things in here. What about your drivers of your trucks? You know, I understand you shut these other things down, but those drivers of the trucks, either you're overdoing them now or you're going to be underdoing them when it gets to it, because the drivers of the trucks still got to make the same amount of trips to get full trucks.
That's correct. So, I mean, you know, of course we would have a trial period to see how this would work in operations, but, you know, theoretically, the truck drivers would be there to collect at the sites when they're open, and, you know, there would be certainly more trash during those times, but of course they wouldn't be, they'd be running the same schedule that they're running now.
Mr. Creed, could I clarify your point? Is your point that the driver's hours should reduce as well, or?
Well, in certain cases, you're going to have to reduce them, or you're going to have to work out some way. For instance, The one on Old Christiansburg Mountain Road down there, on Wayside.
Wayside. Mhm.
Yeah. For a truck to come down there with a locked gate and have to get in with one of those big trucks, sitting there on two curves that you can't see 50 foot each way, that, you can't operate that. That just cannot happen. Somehow or another, he's got to go somewhere and get back to, or walk back, or whatever he has to do in order to unlock that gate and be able to come up there and swing on in. When he gets ready to leave, he's got to do the same thing. If he's picking up from that side, when there's nobody there.
Okay, I'm going to ask Steve Phillips if he can come up and address the issue about how he sees the trash being collected when the sites are closed.
Mr. Creed's right. When the gates are closed, the truck drivers themselves will have to unlock, go in, get the container, come back out, lock the gate, and leave. That is a kind of unique site, the Wayside site. I'm trying to think of any of the others, possibly McCoy site. The truck would be out on the road there as well, to answer your question. A lot of them have room that they can go in and open the gates, but that's a very good point.
Rogers, you have a problem too.
Yeah, I was going to say that one there is closed.
Yeah, that one actually has two gates.
So you got a total of 3 gates right now that we know of that.
At least 3.
Yeah, at least that's what I'm saying. That we know of that. That just.
It's not a matter of once they open the gate and move in, and they'd have to get out and lock the gate to keep people from coming in, load and park their container. So it's kind of like 4 trips in and out of the.
Yeah, they'd have to come out, go somewhere, pull over the side of the road in order to get back and unlock the gate again. That's why I said that just don't work in real life. The other thing that I see that I think would be better if we have to cut hours in order to get where we need to go, rather than having morning hours, I think you need to have the evening hours.
I think that's a guess. Whoever you ask, everybody has their preference. I'm with you. That's the only time I can take mine of the afternoon. But what we've done over time is do an hourly schedule to see where most of the trash came in. Now, all the sites aren't duplicated, but these are real numbers that show you when the trash actually was your highest volume times.
And they're every morning?
Most of the time they're in the mornings. And I guess people are going to work, they throw it out on their way to work.
Just find that surprising, yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're all creatures of different habits. I wait till my wife makes me take mine, and then
I'm just thinking, 6 till 12 to 6, that would be a pretty good time if you had trucks that you had to get in and out of there. I can see this, if they've got all they can do right now, you're going to have at least one more truck somehow picking up at that when they're open.
we have 3 truck drivers, and they push every day.
Well, so you probably got to have 4. So you probably got to add you back a truck driver.
Don't have a truck.
And a truck.
But that's,
I would think. But anyhow, that seems to be a problem.
And we don't know, and that, as Mark alluded to, if the board decides to do something, we'd like to do it on a temporary basis because we will have to tweak.
Sure.
As we go down this avenue. So.
And it would be real nice if you had people who live close by that were manning those things. If you could have maybe 4 hours of a morning and 2 from 4 to 6 of a night. Mm-hmm. That would be your ideal situation as far as
probably, except for weekends.
Yeah.
Weekends is a constant battle there.
That would be something else. But I'm just thinking of what would work a little better than trying to run 6 hours.
Yes, sir.
Because you end up being in the dead spot somewhere there, because all of it's not going to be coming in.
No perfect answer.
No, there's not. And just those are the 2 things that really hit me when he was telling what you were looking at. And I see a definite problem with the drivers getting in, and I think if you could cut it back to 6 hours and put 4 and 2 if they're close enough that they could maybe work 4, go home and eat a sandwich for lunch and then come back of evening and shut it back up. I don't know. But that might be something we'll look at.
Mr. Brown.
I'm glad we're sort of having this discussion, because you'd be surprised how many people think those consolidated waste sites are free. Trash doesn't cost us anything, but trash is very, very expensive. Now, I don't have a problem with reduced hours, but here's a possibility there's 2 sites in my district. There's a McCoy site and there's a Price's Fork site. If it was some closure, I wish both of them wouldn't close the same day, where if I came to this one, I know I could go 5 miles down the road and dump it instead of having to take it back home, to where those 2 sites, the days closed would sort of rotate.
Right.
So people would have access sometime through the week. If not at that site, they would be at the Price's Fork site. So that may be a possibility to where, hey, we can close these 2 days here and the Price's Fork site is open those 2 days. And if they are closed up for 2 days or 1 day,
right,
the McCoy site can take it. I don't know whether it can work out or not, but that would be one of the things that, and around the county too, there's 10 sites. There might be a site that you can close a couple days here, and 5-6 miles down the road is another site as an alternative for people after they loaded it up and everything to get up here and they said it's closed. But the one up the road is open, so to speak. That's just my 2 cents.
One follow-up question about something here, and I'll shut up. The other thing that I saw, and I had already jotted it down, Christmas and New Year's, if they fall on the wrong days, that
Bring
can
it to the
happen.
choir. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all.
We're lucky this year, Christmas is on Wednesday, and that's how far ahead we're looking to set the schedule.
I know we hit that about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest mess that anybody would ever want to see. So I said,
Ms. Perkins.
I don't know. I'm glad that you looked at the peak hours, because I was going to ask you that, but I'm concerned that when we try to reduce these hours, and that people will just dump the garbage out there in front, and it'll sit there. It'll be just like a green box site to me. And I don't know that if I had all my garbage ready to go and it was closed, I don't think I'd take it back home.
And we have had that happen.
And I think
Like
to
on
me,
holidays and things.
yeah, and you said, I was going to ask you if you looked at the peak hours and when people would be most likely to come. But and after all, it is a service to the people. I mean, it's paid for through tax monies, and it's a service that people who live in the county without the garbage picked up at your home.
Right.
And there's some people who just elect to take the garbage out there, and they don't even pay for the locality to, collect the garbage. But I really am concerned about that. I know that it is a very expensive proposition. You're not going to save any of the fixed costs, and I just have a concern that they need to be open for citizens, not at our convenience, but the citizens' convenience. So I don't know.
Ms. Perkins, I will say that any change that would be made, whatever the board may choose to do, certainly would come with it a educational campaign of letting people know that the change is happening, what those hours are. So hopefully we wouldn't have people getting up to the sites and then finding out they're closed, that we would do that ahead of time.
I can understand that, and I really think that's a very important thing to do. But at the same time, I know people accumulate trash at different times. I mean, some weeks where I have more trash than others, and it just it really concerns me that we would have to be trying to go back to consolidated site after it was closed for 2 days. Everybody's trash out there. Not that the people wouldn't know about it because, as you say, with an educational campaign, but I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking that it is a benefit for people who live in the county, and we all pay for it through our tax monies. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Did you?
I had a couple, and I'm still new. I'll steal one math lines. I'm still a little bit new, so I want to hear the nightmare story because I was thinking about additional holidays because we've got hourly employees, and so I was wondering at President's Day I didn't see listed, Easter, and I didn't see listed, and maybe I just missed it, and then New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve, but that would be closing for 2 days, and I heard some of the things, and I see more experienced board members shaking their heads at me. So I take it that was a disaster when you closed for 2 days.
Anytime you close 2 days in a row is a disaster.
Okay.
That's right. The trucks, all the containers have to be cleaned out. Everybody's coming after Christmas with all their things, and we're just inundated. And then a lot of your holidays mimic the Mishwa, the transfer stations. There's no need of us picking it up if we can't take it anywhere. So that's how a lot of the holidays have gotten added on. As far as your Easter, actually, that's one my assistant has taken to Craig to see if that's a day that they could possibly shut down.
So I was just thinking if we can find a few holidays where we could have shutdowns that we could, not to quote Andy Griffith too much, but National Potato Week Day or that type of thing for some holidays, but to look at spreading some of it out. And then how do you think it could work, what Gary's talking about, say on Wednesdays, 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening rather than a 10-hour day, a 6-hour day?
Well, again, Mr. Tuck, I couldn't stand here and tell you it will or it won't. It's worth a trial period. But we haven't been faced with that situation, and just at the board's direction, look at different ways to minimize the hours. We saddled that with the hourly survey that we did to see where our voids were. So, and now that doesn't mean all 10 sites operate the same.
Right.
So what's going to work for one may not work down the road for the other.
And the other thing, I know this is not necessarily a subject, but we talked about the construction materials that now I think there's a better understanding that if I bring 1 2 before, that's going to be okay. But if I bring a load, I'm going to be sent and said go over.
Right.
Has that been conveyed to some of the staff at this point?
Well, it's still in its infancy. The Solid Waste Authority, Mr. Cummins is working with the regional people on 100 there in Floyd's Mountain, and we're all going to be working off the same sheet of music.
Okay.
That's what we're going to bring back to the board so that all 3 entities will reflect what we're preaching. That's what we're going to do. There's no need of doing a potpourri. You can do it this way in the county, and this way at solid waste, and this way up there. We want to get it all uniform. So Mr. Cummins is working on that, and that'll be coming to you all hopefully in the next couple of board meetings.
Well, yeah, it doesn't make a difference. I know we're talking about reducing hours and things, but when you, and I have to speak up for the site attendants. If a person works the Mahoy site and they live in Christiansburg and they got a driver for 3 hours, and then do their 3 hours, and if they're working the evening shift and maybe go back home and drive back for the 3 hours in the evening, I don't think it works very good. I mean, if you had, I think we have to keep the site attendants and have reduced those hours in mind. What I'm saying is not, let's try to be fair to them on them coming for 2 or 3 hours and going home and things like that. So if it's anything, there might be a little longer block of time to help compensate them for the gas and stuff, the travel time.
Steve, what hours do they work currently? What's a shift for a site attendant?
It's 5 and 6 hours. Depends on morning, whichever one you're on.
There's a couple of other things. One, I agree with Mr. Brown. If we've got sites within 5 or 6 miles of each other, if we could keep one of those open you know, and swap off on those, that would be a great big help, and you could shut those all day.
The sites?
Rather than putting them in partial times. The other thing that I think that might would help, when I sat here and started thinking about it, is if you was to do this slowly. And I'm talking about instead of taking away, how many hours do you stay open a day? 10? 6?
Well, you mean currently?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10.
10. So if you started with 10 and you took 2 hours away for 2 or 3 months and give yourself a chance to let the people, the attendants, you know, that are at these sites, I know you have some turnover, and as you go, you can work times out to where you can come on out. I don't want to see any of these people lose their job. I don't want to see that. And
if I may, going back to Mr. Brown's suggestion of closing every other site, every other day, bear in mind you're going to have twice the site coming in, twice the waste coming into one site that you customarily would in a smaller time frame. So if you took the 2 in your district, okay, everybody today's got to take it to Prices Fork. That amount of waste is going to come in larger than probably we can handle.
well, that's not totally true.
I don't think
because
that's good.
what you lose to this site one day, you're gonna make up over here in this next site tomorrow. You know, on a daily basis, it may be something that you need to look at and make sure you have your trucks there at all when they fill. But and I don't really think that he meant, nor did I, that you change off every day,
Right.
close one every day.
No.
I just think that on their turn, you know, maybe 2 of them, 2 days.
I'm just concerned, 2 of the sites, we had to go, the 2 high sites, and put another compactor in. We're emptying both cans, you know, every day.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, you know, if you shut this one down, then you're going to overdo this one for that.
And those may be some that you should have. You know,
So I just wanted that thrown out there.
That was
we
one
had
of the-
looked at that, but instead of 2 school buses hauling one school, now we've got 1 school bus hauling twice as many kids.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the theory there.
But, you know, there's lots of things that we can do to look at it and tweak this thing to where we can save some hours.
I have one more question, and part of my looking at this is we're wanting to take Allegheny Springs, and I think it's $55,000 roughly to man that. Is that, did I see that?
Do you remember, Mark, what that was, Allegheny, to manage?
Why would we be opening a new site if we're going to shut it down?
44 something.
44,000.
Right.
If we, now the summer hours, how long do we run the summer hours for?
The summer hours, 7 to 7. You're 12 hours.
So if we eliminated that hour in the summer hours and just kept it 7 to 6, just like the winter.
Year round.
That's
a good first step.
And that way we could maybe, and I don't know, I'm sure we've got great number crunchers over there that will give us a good idea. But that way it wouldn't hurt. We wouldn't be closing sites. We wouldn't have, maybe we pick up a couple of holidays and we look at that way to be able to pay for that 44,000 of increased man hours that we're going to have at the Allegheny Springs, and do it that way without, at least explore that and look at that.
It's a start.
And like I said, pick up, I guess, now eliminating Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, we get President's Day and Easter, so that would be 2 days.
Well, and also, you know, that's 2 days the truck drivers and the laborers don't have to work. So it's kind of like you get a little more for your buck there. Because not just the site attendants, but the people that run the trash wouldn't have to work either. So it's more saving.
All right, my turn.
I think Mary has had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. I apologize.
I wasn't being assertive tonight. I'm still in Atlanta time. I'm a little laid back. Okay, here's my deal. We need to pay for the site in Allegheny Springs. We need to do it a long time ago. As to how we do it, I'm not in favor of of really cutting hours, unless maybe I could see Chris's suggestion. I mean, this is a service that the citizens have to have, and it affects the quality of life and the quality of what our county looks like. So, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. You have it there, people use it, and this idea of, you know, the higher volume sites being open without the others, that's crazy. That's inequality of services. Or close this one and keep that one. That's inequality. If I'm a shift worker and the only time I can take my trash is in the morning, then it's in the morning. If I'm a night I mean, I just don't get this. What are we thinking? People work all hours, and you have to provide enough times when they can take their trash. I mean, I just don't get what this whole thing is about. We need to go ahead, open the site down there in Gary's district and pay for it. And instead of looking at cutting services to pay for it, we need to figure out a little bit more creative way. And so far, the only thing I've heard mentioned is maybe looking at the summer hours. I don't get what we're doing here.
Well, let me say at this point, this did not come from the General
Right.
Services
It came from
Department.
us. That's what I'm saying. I don't see what
I just want to make it clear that it
I'm
was
saying
not.
we as a board, I don't see
Don't
what we're
kill the
doing here.
messenger.
It's like a no-brainer. You have to provide trash service for your citizens, because we all that have been on the board for 50 million years know what it looked like when we didn't. I just see it as a no-brainer. I don't even know. To me, I mean, we need that site down in your district. We're gonna do something. We've got to do something about it. We need to keep our people employed. We need to find the least impact way on our citizens and on our employees to do that. And some of these things that you've had to come up with, I feel really badly that you had to take the time to come up with them, because I know I wouldn't support them. I'd say no. And so I'm just sorry that we even had to get into that whole thing, but you did an excellent job on trying to look at what to do.
Thank Mark.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
But I mean, we just
No,
need to
that's-
get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say what you had said. I applaud staff for the work that they've done in coming up with the scenarios and things like this. And the whole thing, costs keep going up and up. And we need to look in innovative ways to save money and keep costs down. So I didn't have a problem with them bringing it here. I thought it was good. And they got a few ideas from us. And because, you know, when it comes to how we're going to fund the site, well, I'm one of the ones that my district is taxed out, and I'm not going to put no more money on my taxes to fund the site. So look for alternative ways to fund the site, and that's what you guys done. And thank you for the good work that you did do.
My turn?
No,
You've had your turn.
I've only had one turn, everybody else has had three. No, I'm sorry.
I know.
I just,
Let's go for it.
I'm going to agree with my friend Mr. Tuck and Miss Biggs and Miss Perkins in the area of maybe we ought to cut back an hour, maybe we ought to add a holiday. I have two of the larger sites. That's an impact. Equality for everybody is an impact. And it is one service that in all of our outlying areas, we don't have trash service picking up at our house. We also serve all citizens with it because some of the areas don't have recycling.
right.
And a lot of people like to do that, especially, I don't know if you have recycling in Blacksburg or
Yeah,
not.
we do, but
But I don't believe they do in Christiansburg.
well, they haven't.
They have it available.
They have it
A
available.
lot
but-
of people don't take it, and they end up going to our
So,
sites.
you know, these are very, very important services for a lot of different things. I think consistency on time is more important than $1 when we're talking about our citizens. And you're saving $135,000 to $155,000 out of a $167 million budget. I just think it's wrong. But I wouldn't mind cutting the hour back. I wouldn't mind adding a holiday, especially Easter. You know, would be one that I would definitely recommend we, you know, close. But that's my opinion, and I'm
Sticking to it.
I use that site.
I've got direction.
Well, let's just make sure we're clear about what our next step is. We don't have to do anything.
Right.
We can leave them just the way they are. But when asked to bring something forward about looking at reducing hours, and we've met our obligation to do that. Now, in moving forward, do you want us to make any changes at all? We can just not make any, or we can go back with what I've heard some consensus on, which would be add a couple of the holidays and leave the hours in the summer the same as in the winter, which would reduce 1 hour. Is that where everybody, we have a consensus with, or is there something else you'd like to see before you make a final decision?
Well, may I just say one other thing, please? I can see that maybe there are some holidays. Easter's not on here, frankly. There's no holiday for Easter.
Right.
Weekend. And I could easily see that maybe 1 or 2, like Columbus Day or
President's Day.
what?
President's Day is that?
Or maybe President's Day.
Is that a day that they get now?
No,
Because if it's not, you can't do that because it's going to, the cost wise, it
Right,
doesn't
right.
work.
I don't know, but it says these are the holiday closures.
Well, these are the days
Yeah,
the sites
they're
are
on there.
currently closed.
Right. So
So-
you would have Columbus Day closed, and you would have the other day, President's Day closed, wouldn't you? But President's Day is not listed on here.
Well,
That's what
it's open now. These are the days they're currently closed. The
Closed,
sites
right,
are
right.
now.
So that doesn't make any,
So
No,
President's Day would give us another day to close.
President's Day would, Easter is not a holiday for,
Well, Martin Luther King Day.
it's Sunday. Good Friday's not a holiday for
Martin
the
Luther King
county.
Day. Well, because it
That's on
changes
there.
every year.
What is that, how does that benefit anything
Oh, it's on
as
there.
far as
does,
reducing what we're paying? Because if you give it to them as a holiday, that's pay.
But
Somebody has to
Yeah,
staff
it's
it.
hourly employees, they don't get paid for
Yeah,
holidays.
someone has to be there staffing it if the site is open, so you're incurring a cost.
So you're going to give them a holiday that they don't get paid for.
Yeah, you're just basically cutting their hours, so they don't get as
Right.
much money
They don't
each
get
year.
paid for holidays now, do
And
they?
the other employees of this county are going to get paid for it.
But these are part-time.
Part-time,
Yeah.
part-time
They're
employees.
not full-time.
They don't
Well,
get
some of
paid
them are
if they don't.
full-time, I think.
Down
No,
there, your
they're-
truck drivers and laborers, all your site attendants are hourly people.
So
well,
they don't get paid for holidays as is, right?
Sorry.
They only get paid when they work. They don't get paid for holidays
Correct.
and things like
Do
that.
they get paid a bonus on holidays?
No.
No.
They don't get anything.
So, at this point, again, there's a number of different options, and I don't want to belabor everybody's evening with just this one issue. We got several other topics here. But first of all, do you want us to continue to pursue some reduction?
Man,
I'd like to see the numbers to figure out what the hour would do and what the 2 holidays would do.
Okay.
And then maybe, but that's the only option, at least for me, that I,
Me too.
All right, would everybody like to see some information about what the savings would be with those 2 minor reductions?
well, but
Yes.
well, that's a two-edged sword, you know. If you say no, that means you don't want to cut out any expense. If you say yes, and yes, it's going to affect somebody that we don't want it to be affecting. I just think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And just because it's costing us money, again, I think that if we're going to look, to me, it'd be just like cutting the hours out for deputy.
but some of those sites are now going to be working Allegheny Springs. We're going to be shifting them. They're going to be working. They just aren't, because we're going to have that site man. They're not necessarily going to get laid off. They're not going to necessarily, because that $50-some thousand is getting shifted. We're just looking for ways to be able to.
Why do we have to shift?
How are those people going to work at 2 sites at once?
Well,
Yeah.
they're not 2 sites at once, but let's say that you're not working one day at prices 4.
Yeah, but that's,
But you maybe the next day that you're going to, we've got the Allegheny Springs site there, maybe.
but the sites aren't the same, Chris, and
But there are different drives, but there'll still be that work that would be potentially available, we're adding an additional site that we're manning that we can still staff with our current staff.
If we cannot
think that's
afford
true.
it, I don't see
Let's
how.
look at the numbers, and that's,
I don't see how you can do it with the current staff.
I think at this particular point, we're not making a decision. We're asking staff to bring some information back to us.
Well, I
We're not making a
understand that,
decision,
but
so we
I
need
don't
to see
want
that
them to have to
information.
work any harder than they've already done.
Yeah, I mean, like, is there a commitment on the board, like, if staff comes back and say, okay, if we cut 1 hour at every site and we do this and that, and these people will be impacted, this is how much money they would lose.
We can figure that out for ourselves.
You know, like, are we gonna support that?
well, I guess I want to know how we're going to pay for it. And
How are we
so
gonna pay for what?
the additional site that we're manning,
Well, if we can't pay for it, then we shouldn't be getting it.
well, and so I'm looking for ways to do it without raising taxes, and this is one of the
No, we
ways.
don't have to raise taxes. We have carryover money at the
For
end.
44,000, I don't think we would have to raise.
We have
I
carryover
understand.
money at the end.
I understand,
May
but
cost a dime.
I like to figure out how I'm paying for things as I'm going along.
Right.
Well, I just told you.
Put it in your budget.
Can
Put it in the budget, like we do everything else.
Can I say something very briefly? Mr. Chair. I never think it's a bad idea to get more information. Personally, I don't like the idea of cutting services to our citizens unless there's a pressing need, and I don't see a pressing need here. I also want to say, too, that I'm glad Mr. Tuck brought it up, is that, you know, that's kind of the elephant behind this is the Allegheny Springs site that we're going to have to pay for and staff, and whenever that gets up and running and stuff like that. I do think, however, this is pie in the sky thinking, that a little bit wishful thinking, that we can not cut services or just shift some things around and not deal with this, is that, you know, to provide those services, we do need to pay for them. And so I agree with Mr. Tuck on that. But I do think that we need to provide these services to our citizens based upon it. Everybody wants to provide the services, but nobody really wants to make the decisions about how we're going to pay for them. And so I think we're going to be going in circles when this comes back to us about not wanting to do this or that or the other thing. So I'm a little stuck, and I will not support anything that will cut services, especially when it's on the backs of hourly employees of this county.
All right, so what direction do we have then?
Well, what I have heard is it's not making a decision on any plan, but to bring back some additional information that would look at the impact of adding 2 holidays and reducing the summer hours by 1 hour. What would that generate in terms of savings, and what impact would that have on particular site attendance? And to merely bring that information back to the board.
That sound all right with everybody?
No. No.
I'll support getting more information, just so.
More information.
2, Gary?
No.
I was of the understanding going in on this thing that we were going to have to cut something
Says who?
by getting all this information together. I somehow or another, I got to the opinion that, you know, we just got to we got to do this in order to keep going. And I thought it didn't make any sense, and I guess I should have kept on thinking. But at this point in time, I don't support anything that will make the people who make the least any less money. I mean, it's not a whole lot of people out there. I mean, if we can't stand the heat of one person being added, or 2 people being added for a year is what it amounts to, then we're in pretty poor shape, and I don't think any of us want to go back 15 years and see what was laying beside the roads and down in the ditches and in the hollows and places that people came and dumped all of their trash. I don't think anybody here wants to see that, and I don't think that Mr. Hall has enough inmates to go clean it all up should it happen. I don't think that would be a solution. So, you know, I really think we need to bite the bullet and see how it's going to work. And if it's not working, then we'll try to fix it.
Okay, so no change, basically. No change. No change, Mary?
Yeah, I'm for no change because I don't want to hurt the people either.
Okay, Bill?
I ain't saying no more. I've been beat up over trash all past hour.
I think I'm in the minority. It sounds like we don't want the staff to come back with that information from what everybody's saying, and we're just going to find a way to
Figure it
pay
out.
for it.
Well, that's what I said initially. It's 155,000 and you know, if there's no, Matt, you all right?
I don't want to see any change. I do think it would be worthwhile to collect this information because we're going to deal with this at some point. So.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid we gotta.
Well, we can
No
certainly
change
bring
vote
the
at this
information back about what the potential costs. I think you've got that outlined, and you've had it outlined before, what the potential cost is for opening a new site. We can, again, bring that back to you or send that information out to you again. But at this point, we'll stop.
Okay.
That's what I think. We just stop. And thank you to Mark Magruder and Steve Phillips for all the work they've put into developing these scenarios. We've indicated we'd share some information with you. We've done that, and now we stop and move on.
All right. I gotta figure out how to get out of here. Thank you. I gotta change. What do I do here?
What's the next one? Oh, state disability program.
State Disability Program. That's it. And Ms. Edmonds, thank you.
Okay, well, let me just sort of introduce, while Karen's pulling the presentation up, a little bit about what's going on here. The state disability, or the disability program and the state requirements, this is not unlike what the state has done to us or mandated previously under the Line of Duty Act. There's certain changes that occurred at VRS, and the law changed and put some additional impact on the county that we now have to pay for. And it is complex, to say the least, in trying to understand what the mandates are that the state has required that we comply with. So what Karen is going to do is sort of share with you some background about the changes in VRS and how we sort of got here and what is being required of us and a recommendation for how we proceed. So I'll turn it over to Karen Edmonds, our Human Resources Director, at this point.
Thank you and good evening. As Carol said, there have been numerous changes having to do with the Virginia retirement system in the past several years. The most recent change affecting localities involves changes to the disability program that's currently provided through the VRS. These changes in the state code affect not only the disability program, but they mandate extended medical leave. Now, a couple of these changes involve grouping our employees. So a major change created two classes of employees. Employees that were on roll at the time that the legislation was passed, basically July 1st, 2010, all became Plan 1 employees. Plan 2 employees were the employees hired after that date. So the 2012 General Assembly established a new VRS hybrid pension plan for employees, which excludes sworn officers. They're not eligible for this hybrid plan. But everyone hired after January 1st, 2014 will create a third class, a hybrid group of employees. Now, Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees will have the opportunity to become a hybrid employee if they would like. And they'll have from January through April 30th of 2014 to make that decision. But for hybrid plan employees, the law requires that a local disability program, both short-term and long-term, be provided, since the VRS disability retirement benefit provided to current employees will no longer be available to this new group of employees. The hybrid plan employees must be covered by the code by a Virginia local disability program. It's actually VLDP through VRS or a comparable program. The localities may opt out of the VRS program and implement a comparable program according to how the code dictates. The decision to opt out of the VRS program is irrevocable, as many of the decisions with VRS are. As Carol mentioned, the Line of Duty Act a few years ago was kind of similar to this. And several localities, we were among them, opted out of VRS, and we experienced significant savings by doing that. Now, both VACO and VML insurance programs are offering comparable plans. So they've done the homework for us, and these comparable plans comply with the new state mandates. VACO's insurance program through VACORP has partnered with the Standard Insurance to offer a plan to localities, an alternative. But whether through VRS or through a comparable program, the locality pays for the program. And we didn't get this into the presentation, it's kind of late breaking, but it's kind of fluid as to some other localities that are going with VACO at this point, but we thought we'd share that. I did find out these counties and schools have made a commitment to opt out of VRS and to go with the VACORP program with county and schools, Campbell County, Bedford County, Frederick County schools, Southampton, Surrey County and schools, Augusta, Brunswick, Accomack. So the list is going to grow because the lists that have opted out already of the VRS program is very extensive. We just brought you the ones that were kind of a sure thing at this point. So we prepared a cost comparison, actually Angie did, that looks 5 years out at the VACORP alternative, the VML quote, as well as the VRS costs. And as you can see in the left column, VACORP is the cheaper alternative of the three. Now, for purposes of illustration, we assume 25 employees. That's basically what we hired last year, and it does not include deputies who would be exempt. And we used an estimated annual salary of $40,000. And in addition to being the cheaper alternative, the rate guarantee of those rates is the longest. Basically, VRS's guarantee for their rates is only 6 months, so it's not very long. But the VACORP rate is 3 years, the guarantee. Now, if you kind of look at these two columns, the Plan 1 and Plan 2 side, which again includes new deputies because they're exempt, but just a few bullets kind of on a high level to help you see what we do now compared to the new hybrid plan, which is going to be pretty heavy on insurance. It's going to be geared that way. So staff recommends opting out of the VRS program and selecting VACORP's program or VACO's program through VACORP for these reasons. The cost is significantly less and leads to future flexibility. Baycorp will help guide the county through the process as it will affect some of our policies. And Baycorp already has our workers' compensation coverage, which is part of our disability program. So basically, if the board approves opting out of ERS and the staff's recommendation of the Baycorp program, we would like to bring a resolution back to you at the October 16th meeting. But the next steps include those resolutions, but also to research further the impact on our personnel policies and our leave programs, and to do a future work session on those changes, any potential changes. So I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Just one quick comment right quick. I could see this being an HR nightmare because when a person walks in with a problem, are you hybrid? Are you plan one? Are you plan, two?
It's pretty much what's going on already.
Yeah. So go ahead.
This is an unfair question, and I apologize in advance. Could you just give me a sense about the research impact on personnel policies? What policies might be impacted by this? Or how might our policies be impacted by this?
Well, we will have 3 basic groups of employees, or 2 kind of plan 1, plan 2 is one group, hybrid another. And we have a sick leave bank. We have leave policies that kind of bridge the gap because we do not have short-term disability now, so these leave policies kind of fill that gap. So we need to look at the impact with both groups. And so we've really not had a lot of time to do that. We've thought some about it, but certainly no pen to paper yet. But leave is a predominant one.
Yeah. Because to me, and maybe I'm just because I'm not in HR, I don't understand HR. Is that seems a very important consideration. And if we adopt a resolution opting out of ERS and participating in the Baycorp Corporation before we actually know how it's going to impact our personnel policies, then that seems a little cart before the horse. Am I mistaken there?
Well, it's very complex, as Carol said earlier. It is very detailed, and it does have a lot of legs. We did ask for an extension to take some time to really look at the bigger picture here, and we're trying to, at this point, kind of make the high-level decision first and then get down into the more nitty-gritty of it.
Well, I think the bottom line is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, we have a deadline and we don't have any choice. You either stay in VRS's program and have a higher rate, or you opt out of VRS's program and you go with something else on your private insurer. The requirements are mandated no matter what.
And that deadline is October 16th, or shortly after October 16th?
November 1st, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And so they're almost 2 separate issues. Trying to address how you address leave with these multiple groups in your personnel policies is a much bigger issue that all jurisdictions, and even I think VACO and VML both, are trying to work and try and help localities figure out what they need to do to make sure that they're not inequitable to all employees, I guess, across the board. But as far as VRS changes where they are saying we're not doing VRS disability anymore. I mean, that's the bottom line. The program's going away. And what they've put in place of it is saying you will have a short-term disability program and you will have long-term disability, and this is the way you can either buy it from VRS or buy it from someone else. Now, jump in if I'm getting off the track here. It's just when you have, and those are requirements for hybrid employees. When you then have Plan 1 and Plan 2, the issue for HR people and all employees, well, what do you do to make sure that what you have for Plan 1 and Plan 2 in terms of leave will match up in some way with what you're offering that third group? So it's almost 2 separate issues.
Did you have something, Marty?
Carol, am I reading it right? You're going to have an impact on your policies whether you stay with VRS or not, right?
That's correct.
Yes, we were mandated to have that third group.
Yes.
So we have to address it either way. It's just which group you're going to go, which provider you're going to go.
That's absolutely right.
Okay. Ms. Perkins had a question?
I don't know. I don't really get this. How does it really affect personal leave? How does it really affect long-term disability? How does it affect what those of us who are under 1 and 2, how does it really affect us other than the fact that there's no VRS disability anymore?
Well, the county's going to be different from another locality out there.
I know.
We've got our
I just
own
want to look.
policies, yes. Basically, we have a sick leave bank that, accruals are going to be the same on both sides. It's just that if accruals are low and you run out pretty quickly, you may be eligible for a sick leave bank. So that helps you get extra leave if you've got something catastrophic that's happened to you. That's the current picture. What's going to happen in the future is the same accruals, but it's going to work a lot like workers' compensation. You've got a 7-day elimination period, and on the 8th day, it goes to an insurance company. And we will keep them, we are committed to keeping them as an employee up to 6 months of time. So in a way, it's a little more assurance than people might have with the sick leave bank because there are rules that go with the sick leave bank.
So there won't be any sick leave bank?
Well, we haven't made those decisions yet, but we're certainly looking at the new group having the equivalent of the sick leave bank through the short-term disability insurance program.
The new group has to have an equivalent, doesn't have to have the same as the other two groups. The plan 1 and 2.
Well, because the mandate is, state code change is that we have to offer, and we have to enroll our employees under the hybrid plan, and then at a particular point, we move them into short-term disability if they're not able to work.
And that's not an option.
And not an option.
That's a requirement.
It is not a choice. It is a state code mandate.
Ms. Perkins, right now, we don't have that. I mean, if you're disabled short-term, you're going to have to use your sick leave or your annual leave.
Right.
And right now, but when that change comes into effect, the county's going to have to provide that time off, whether they have that annual leave or not.
They don't have to.
Right now, we don't have to, but we will whenever that change goes into effect. It's a benefit mandated by the state.
And it actually is more expansive than family medical leave, which is 12 weeks. This can go up to 25 weeks.
And family medical leave, we don't have to provide pay, you just provide job security within that time frame. So with disability, it's pay. It's a big difference.
Mr. Tuck?
How do you...
Are the requirements...
No, go ahead.
The requirements, are they on page 7 of the presentation that we have, which are the personal leave? Is that what the state is now requiring? What's on the new hybrid plan, those points, that's what we have to do?
That's correct.
Okay. So the biggest things I see here is the 6-month disability and then no VRS disability retirement.
Yes, that's correct. Which takes someone basically for the rest of their life. There's a benefit that's provided. So VRS will no longer do that. And so they move into a long-term disability situation. And we did a high-level presentation here which says to Social Security disability retirement, but it can be other levels along the way. Could be something shorter term than that a person just may want to go with their service retirement through the Virginia retirement system. So it can be a lot of things once it gets to the long-term disability side.
So would you have to buy, can you buy disability retirement then in a private plan?
Not that I'm aware of. You've got Social Security disability retirement that many qualify for.
Right. But I'm talking about the Virginia plan, since VRS is not, don't we get retirement now, disability, if we cannot work anymore,
That's correct.
and it comes through VRS. It does-
Right.
You might have Social Security, but you get VRS too.
You do.
And it's
That's-
being paid for, right?
That's exactly right.
Right,
For the rest of your life.
right, for the
Yes.
rest of our lives. So now, that's costing them too much money, so can you go out and buy a private? I know years and years and years ago, before we had anything, my husband had a disability plan, but it was private. We paid for it because he had colitis, and he had to, there was a chance that he was not going to be cured of that, and he hasn't been, but
There are two parts to that. There's long-term care, which, provides for assistance, nursing home, that
yeah,
kind
but
of thing.
suppose you didn't buy in and opt into long-term care.
Okay, then there is, you can buy disability insurance, like a long-term disability plan yourself in the private market.
But they're pretty-
But it's not like disability retirement. It's
Right.
going to be based on your age and a lot of variables.
Just like long-term insurance is.
Yes.
And nobody now can opt into long-term insurance, is that correct? If they didn't do it before, it's not available?
Long-term care,
Uh-huh.
I think that's correct. I would have to verify that to make sure. I know all new employees have the option of buying into
But
it.
not older employees.
I think that's correct. I think you had a one-time opportunity
Right.
to buy into it.
But in terms of Plan 1, Plan 2, and public safety employees are basically going to stay the same.
Correct.
And it's the employees hired after January 1, 2014 who will come under this hybrid plan that we're required to offer these different things because VRS will not be given VRS retirement anymore. But for Plan 1 and Plan 2 and public safety, things should stay the same.
Right. Well, that's what it shows here on your plan comparisons.
Right.
That's why I wanted to know, these new people coming in, though, they won't be able to retire through Virginia activity.
Service retirement,
Yeah, service
they can. They,
Yeah, well,
even if they're disabled, they always have the option for service.
But
Disability-
service retirement is not the same as
It's not as
disability,
much.
and it's not as much.
That's correct.
That much I know.
That's what VRS has decided. You were correct. It's too expensive and they're not going to do it
They're
any
not going to do
longer.
it anymore.
Can I-
However, if we had the General Assembly put the money back in, it might not be too bad, but go ahead.
It ain't gonna happen.
Well, that's a much longer discussion than we
We're
have
not
time
going to get there. I
to.
know, we're not going to get there.
It would be a lot nicer if the General Assembly did a lot of other things. Getting back to the issue at hand here, on page 6 of the PowerPoint, where you have just the cost comparison, am I understanding correctly that these three options that you're presenting us here, that they offer the same services, they're simply a difference in cost?
Yes. They're structured slightly different. Baycorp and VRS are the same. VML has an administrative fee as part of theirs. I think that was factored in. All of that was factored in, the raw numbers here. But it's structured just a little bit differently.
Okay, but I mean, basically what I'm asking is VML, for example, going to give you better coverage for our employees even because it costs a little bit more?
No.
Or are you going to get the same coverage, the same services, just cheaper from VACORP?
That's the scenario.
Okay.
It is the same coverage. Really, all three have followed the state mandate. VACORP and VML expanded it a little bit from VRS. The rate guarantee is an example of that.
Okay.
To make it palatable and appealing to localities. But the coverage is pretty much the same and it follows the state mandate.
Okay. So basically, what you're presenting us with is that we can choose one of these three things. They're pretty much exactly the same. The state is making us do it, so we have to pick one of them. So we can pick the cheap one or the expensive one, even though we're getting the same thing ultimately.
Yes.
Okay.
So what do you think most counties are going to choose?
Well, the list, I've seen the list of those that have opted out already. already a VRS, and it's very long. In fact, I asked the standard carrier, I said, I'm not sure who's going to be left in VRS, but it is very fluid, and a lot of boards are making the decision that you all are making right now. So even though they think they're headed in a direction, all the paperwork and the agreements have not been signed, except for those that I mentioned to you tonight, and they went with VACOR.
And also, Karen, if we select VACOR at this point in time, can we change it in the future if we decide?
You mean to go back to VRS?
Not to go back, but let's say we decide in the future we'd want to go with VML. They made some changes. I mean, are we locked into something, or do we have the ability to change in the future? Perhaps there's another product out there that might be better.
Which could very well come down the pike. We are locked in terms of going back to VRS. That is irrevocable. When we come out, we cannot change our mind in 4 years, 30 years plus, and go back to VRS. But in terms of other options, that's why we chose it, because it gives us flexibility. We can make a change if we need to.
Can you leave if you stayed in VRS, can you leave it at any time after?
No.
So once you make the decision, either way it's fine?
Either way it's fine.
Mr. Brown.
The way VRS is going, and you got that 6 months guarantee on there, I just wouldn't trust them.
Yeah.
And when you get to 6 months, they give everybody to get into it, and then they'll make a bunch of changes after you get locked into it. But a company like VACOR that gives you a 3-year commitment that, hey, these are the rates that guarantee for 3 years, I mean, that's enough to sell me right there.
And they have a good reputation and everything else that they've done.
Well, we saw with Line of Duty Act that those that stayed with VRS had a hike pretty quickly after that.
I think the other reason we were looking at VACOR, it is with the Virginia Association of Counties, and they are our organization that helps work with the General Assembly, helps counties through various programs, as Supervisor Biggs knows, having served on the district council. And we were looking at what other counties were, again, going with VACOR, as VACO being the association that knows the most and supports counties. So when all things came down, it seemed like they had a better price. They offered a better pricing for longer years. They offered the coverage and comparable to what VML would offer. And so it seemed like the best choice was to go with our organization that you all as board members work with on a regular basis.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks to Karen and Angie both, who Angie sat quietly over there in case you had any money questions, and thank you.
Okay, the next item is our legislative agenda for VACO. And
that information, what's included in tab S is last year's priorities. And we actually do need to update that one because the last bullet has to do with liquor by the drink of the 2 exits, and that passed. So we can mark that one off as complete off the agenda. I would also look at bullet point number 2, restore previous state budget cuts. Well, the state did restore the flexible cut, so we may want to rephrase that about and continue with ending any future reductions on there. There are also 2 items, and I'll mention these, and Marty, you jump in if I leave out any portions of it. The correcting of the split precincts. I think that's something that last year we joined with a statewide effort in order to get that correction made one time, and it ended up getting caught up in the General Assembly and didn't pass. And so you do have the ability to pursue that on your own. And if you would like, certainly we can put that into your legislative priorities. I think Delegate Yost has indicated that he would be glad to introduce that this upcoming session, and so you can pursue it separately outside the statewide issue to correct those split precincts. The second issue has to do with asking the General Assembly to add Montgomery County to the list of counties currently authorized to do mandatory water and sewer connections. There are a number of those already in the code, and this would be a request to add Montgomery County to that. Marty, is there anything else you would want to mention?
In the mandatory connection, you would be given the authority to do that, but if someone has a domestic supply or source of potable water, you can't make them disconnect. So it's the same policy that the PSA currently has, where you require someone to connect when they don't have any water. However, if they already have potable water, you don't make them disconnect that, and you don't make them pay any minimum connection. So the authority you'd be asking to be added to 15.2.2110 would be similar to what the PSA does for the policy standpoint now.
But if they had a well and the well went bad and county water was there, they couldn't drill another well.
No.
They'd have to hook on to the county water.
Correct.
So
There's no fee for not using it if it goes by a...
Correct.
Is there the same, does the same thing happen if you have a pump in your well that goes bad?
No, it's only if it becomes contaminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those would be the two items that we would suggest you add, and we'll be happy to include any other issues that the board may want us to include.
I have a question. This thing where the state comes in and takes over school boards or schools that don't meet certain goals, whatever it is. My question is, after seeing what's been going on, if the state comes in and takes over your school system, how does that impact the locality's funding of the school system? I would like somebody to answer that question, because if they also then have control of locality's money in some way or whatever, I don't quite understand how they can come in and take over without having some kind of funding mechanism. And my question is, how do they do that? I mean, because if they intend on taking over the power of our ability to fund things, I can't support that.
Right, and Ms. Biggs, you know that current authorities is going to be challenged in court as a
right, and I mean,
because of the constitutional.
Right, I mean, I personally support that, but what I'm wondering is, has anyone thought beyond just them coming in and taking over the school part of it as to what impact it's going to have on locality's funding? So, I mean, when will that all be resolved if they have a lawsuit?
It's just starting now. I mean, it's going to take a while.
Is there anyone is there anyone in Richmond that can even answer that question? Probably no, because they haven't thought that far ahead. But to me, I don't know. When you're looking at legislative priorities, I don't want somebody from the state telling me any more about how I can fund or not fund things. I'm sick of them telling me anything as a board member.
So let me make sure I understand your question.
I understood that they had not decided how it was to be funded.
Well, I'm just thinking ahead, because they might get down
No,
here
I know.
and sit there and say, well, it's a great idea. What we'll do is we'll go in and take over the school systems, and then we'll also take over the county's money that's going to the school system and use it the way we want to use it.
Okay.
And that's what I'm worried about.
Okay, so your question is, would they sort of send the county the same bill and say, give us your money?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I just don't think that's appropriate.
I think that's what they said.
We can certainly see if we can find someone who knows the answer.
Because if that's what they said, maybe that's something we ought to look at as far as our legislative priorities.
Anybody else?
Okay.
I
Move
think
to go out
adding
of
those two
closed
things
session?
would be good. The two suggestions I would support,
Yeah.
especially the split districts, fixing the split districts.
Okay, if you think of other things you'd like for us to include in the resolution, just let me or Craig know.
And do we have a motion to go out of closed meeting?
So moved.
Not closed meeting, work session?
Yeah, second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuttle?
Aye.
Chair Barlettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
County Attorney's report.
No report, Mr. Chair.
County Administrator's report.
Okay, just real quick, let me mention a couple of dates. I think Vicki is trying to determine how many of you all, or if all of you, can make November the 21st as your meeting with the legislators. So if you could keep that in mind and let her know. The next thing is we've got a date from the school system, December the 10th, as to whether or not the board would be able to make a joint meeting with the school board on that date. So if you'll check your calendars and let Vicki know about that. The last date on here is we put something in your Dropbox this afternoon. VDOT has scheduled a design public hearing on the US 460 bypass interchange and Southgate Drive relocation project. It's October the 21st, and it will be held at the Blacksburg Community Center, and the information about that's in your Dropbox. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Supervisor Creed.
Okay, I got just one thing, and I'd like to put this into a motion for the comprehensive amendment request that Mr. Rutledge made because of the time that's going to be between this meeting and the next meeting of more than 3 weeks, and won't give them, the quicker they can get into it down there, the better off we're all going to be. They can get started maybe before the winter gets here completely. So I'd just like to see us, means there was no one spoke against it, to go forward with that.
Okay. Do we need any
Mr. Chair,
special?
just to clarify, would that be just their property?
Just their property.
Have a
Second.
motion?
So,
Have a
so not
second?
the adjoining properties.
Just their property.
And I don't have a, I want to do the mixed use, but I wonder, we were talking about all of having the mixed use and changing it, and I was wondering about the folks, and so would you consider a friendly amendment? Because in being at the planning commission, I think those folks wanted to have that mixed use, at least that's my impression, and I see them nodding their heads that it's not just my impression. I know Steve is here, but I think those adjoining landowners really felt comfortable after they spoke with them that they were going to get that mixed use.
I'm fine with that. It's just a matter of if everybody else is. I think everybody's.
I would rather wait and bring that back next meeting, since we're not in a rush on that, and give them one more opportunity to speak. And we can change that future land use designation.
Because Steve said that was just this.
Right,
and
if you don't mind, he's raising his hand. I think he wants, if you don't mind.
Can we bring him up?
No, hold on. We've heard from this gentleman, your impression, but I mean, we as a board need to decide.
I understand that we need to decide, but here's the thing: those folks walked out of here thinking that they were going to get it all together as a unit, and then if we vote for one, and then they look at it, well, we can always take it back up. You're right. Here in a couple of weeks.
Which folks walked out? Nobody else spoke.
I know they didn't spoke, but I think that there was another couple here that was here from the first. They just didn't speak because they were in agreement with what was being done, and we were talking about.
Well, that's. I understand, you taking that position, but I mean, I'd rather just deal. If this is the only one that we're trying to move ahead with, I'd rather do that. And then, I mean, unless somebody else is trying to do something that requires a future land use change, I mean, they can wait a couple of weeks and give them one more opportunity. If nobody shows up, then it passes 7-0 in October 16th.
I just think you may have some folks that are going to be upset because they were under the impression that it was all going to be voted on and it was going forward together. And that was my impressions. And I know it's only a couple of weeks, but sometimes people see something and they say, "Oh, well, only Shaw got it passed, and we didn't get it. Now we're stuck in an industrial." And I know it'll only be a couple of weeks, but that's, and I saw those folks here at the planning commission meeting. Those were some of the folks that expressed their concerns at the planning commission. I know, that I think that's part of my job as liaison is to describe what takes place. And so, at the same time, do I want to see these folks be able to move forward immediately? Yes. But that was my impression. And I know that we've got, and the reason I was pointing him, he's had more discussions with those folks. Remember, they met with them afterwards. And the reason and he started nodding his head is because I think he may be able to provide us some additional information. So when we vote here in just a second, that will make us better and informed vote.
But we're also, but we're also only hearing his side of the story. And I don't mean that that's incorrect side of the story, but it is without the input of the other people who are actually being affected, being here to speak for themselves.
Right. And they were here and heard him speak, and then they chose not to speak tonight because of some of the things he talked about. And as I understood, he was talking about the whole section, not just their individual. And so sometimes if you hear somebody agreeing with things, you don't necessarily get up to speak. If they were really,
And sometimes you're intimidated. I mean, you're imparting motivation to them, which I don't think is necessarily fair. You may well be right, and that's fine. And you can offer the friendly amendment, and Gary accepts it. That's fine, and I'm going to vote against it because of that friendly amendment. But and I'll be outvoted. That's fine. But I'm raising my objections.
Well, I just have one thing to say. I'm a person that likes to stick to the schedule, and I think I've mentioned this before when we pulled things out and voted on them. I know that we do it all the time. But, the process is it should have been on the next meeting, okay? So I'm just saying that is something that, everyone knew that going in, and they knew what the timeline was, etc. I understand, that they want to move ahead, but when you get in this is the kind of thing that happens. Gary, it's in your district, okay? So your motion was that you wanted to do it just for that one section, right?
That's what I understood Steve to say when he was putting out. He specifically said this is just for this.
That's what I understood also.
Okay, and I understand.
So I don't know what others
I understand
gets
what
drug
you're
into
saying. You were there and we weren't there.
And I believe, Chris did offer a friendly amendment. So,
Yeah.
Gary needs to decide whether he
Yeah.
needs to accept
I'll
that.
support what is in his district.
Well, I think, the voting has started, and I think have there been a couple votes on
No, I think it was a motion, and a second,
And discussion.
yeah, then discussion.
Somebody has voted.
No.
So they want to
I know
amend yours.
it's late, but does anybody have any problems with the fellow who has spoken with them very recently, maybe providing us some additional information before we vote even on the friendly amendment?
I do not have anything wrong with that. I would be willing to listen, but with the understanding that according to what Steve said, it will not be good for either one of them at that point.
I don't believe that's what Steve was saying. I think he thought it was going to be better if it was a mixed use for everyone, but
Well, yeah, I think he might have too, but for tonight, I think he said that it was just, those were the only ones that
That's
had
where I
applied.
understood it too. Do you have anything on that?
Maybe our attorney can give us a...
Yeah, it's up to the board. And I'm not sure Steve did say that, but I don't know.
That's what happens when you vote on things.
I'd rather have one in the hand than
I'm ready for these people to be able to move on.
yeah, I mean, that's
And
the
then we
purpose.
can come back and do the
Everybody's
rest of
going
it.
to get their chance.
Yeah.
But to me, I think that my obligation is to the people who bought the land from us and sat there in the auction and paid a good price for it. And I'd like to just vote on what I put out there.
Can I here's something that could happen maybe. If we just vote on just that section, could we not, through our staff, inform the other landowners that, as to what happened and that theirs will be on next time? So if anyone wants to say something that didn't get a chance, they could come. Couldn't we do something like that?
Well, sure.
That would be sort of a compromise.
Sounds like
That's
a
good.
But we would
compromise.
officially notify them so they're not feeling like they were, like Chris was saying, just left out. How about that idea?
That works.
That works for me. Everybody all right with
I
that?
understand
I'm
what you're
fine.
saying, too.
Okay, do we have to make any change on the motion?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah,
Do we have a second?
Mr. Tuck had a comment.
And I know that Gary said you didn't mind listening to him. I really would like to hear somebody who has spoken with those people tonight to see what their impression of was before they walked out. And maybe we do exactly what
Is the
Mary
board all
said.
right with listening to them?
Maybe it's just too late for them.
No, I'm always listening to anybody.
Is the board all right with listening?
Yeah, I mean,
2 minutes?
it's
2 minutes?
that close to 11. A few more minutes ain't gonna hurt.
Yeah.
The only concern, I agree with Mr. Tuck's concern specifically about if ours is approved, because we did speak with all the neighbors. The Dubois family was here tonight, and they left. They're one of our adjacent property owners. The only thing I'm concerned about, the application was submitted by Shaw. And so if you were to vote tonight only on our piece, and maybe the county attorney can speak to this, then the application stuff is done at that point.
No, well, I think the application was submitted by you, but then the planning commission included all the other
Right,
properties.
so I didn't know if it would have to, if you vote on one piece of it tonight, does that mean you have to go back through the entire
No,
process again?
I think they could vote on one
They could
now
vote
and do the, yeah, because the planning commission expanded, in essence, your application, included those.
I feel pretty confidently that the group of property owners that we spoke with, which was a majority of them, were all in favor of doing the mixed use all together. Certainly, our only concern would be that they then see that our property was voted on tonight after they left, thinking everything was kind of on track, and then that there would be some concerns. We're certainly going to meet with them and continue to meet with them between now and October 16th. So we'd certainly leave that to your all's discretion. I guess we have to.
But I would almost, I think at this point, if it was just my piece of property, Shaw's piece of property that was voted on, I almost rather withdraw the request to vote tonight, because I feel like I've kind of got a contract with these people and they were on board for the mixed use, and I don't want to do anything to offend them.
Well, maybe that would be the thing to do then, because it wasn't supposed to be voted on tonight anyway. But I understand what you guys are saying, but you sort of know, just by listening to the discussion, there's support for what you're doing.
Right. Well, the planning commission vote, and that was the only reason I asked for it. The planning commission's vote was 7-0 for the entire group of parcels to be mixed use. And once that meeting was over and we met with the people, they thought they had a better stake, basically, of making more money with their property as mixed use. And I think that's why the Dubois didn't speak tonight, because they were satisfied with the.
And the specific request, the reason we requested this was because the planning commission public hearing and vote will be before you all vote. And so they will be looking at it through the prism of the comprehensive plan being light industrial.
Now, I'm sure that they could go forward.
And they can say contingent upon.
Contingent upon.
Yeah.
But we're trying to make things smoother, not less smooth. We apologize for more negative. Let's go to the next one.
But I know the homeowners were happy with the mixed use designation when they figured out that the plain industrial. We just don't think, even though we've got the biggest piece of the pie, even if you group all the other ones, I think staff says like 22 acres. For what they're thinking of a use down there, if the intermodal ever did come, is really not big enough anyway.
All right, where are we at now on the,
It'd be up to Gary if he wanted to withdraw it until next time, based on what they said.
You know, I see that there's no winning in this seat. Because that's, not what I was asked by these folks this evening when I talked to them but I certainly do not care if the other people's stuff get in, because I think it's going to get in 2-3 weeks from now anyhow. I mean, I really absolutely believe that.
They still have to apply for rezoning.
But it wasn't what I was asked. But I'm going to change it, and I don't want to hear no whimpering if it comes out different.
So you're going,
So you're accepting his amendment?
With the amendment?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Now, do we have to do that separate or no? Marty,
Yes?
we don't have to do the amendment separate?
No, it's a friendly amendment, so if he accepts it, then you don't need to vote.
Okay, all right.
And then, so I guess I would second your motion, Gary.
I have a question. All right, so what we're saying is every single homeowner down there is in agreement to this, based on that we're just hearing that, but we don't really know that. Is that what we're saying?
Based on the information that we've gotten at this point.
Here's the thing, he's put his credibility on the line. They still have to come back for rezoning. He's not going to put his credibility on the line and misrepresent something to us when that's not the truth. And we had, like I said, I saw some of those people speak. I know that you guys did, but there's times that the fire rescue bill comes back and says, this is what everybody was thinking.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
Well, let's vote on it. Let's see the up or
See where we
down
go.
in the middle.
All right. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye, based on the fact that Mr. Creed is in Mr. Creed's district and he made the motion and he's comfortable with it. Make that part of the record, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
No, solely because of the timing of this. I'd rather wait until October 16th.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Bolettis?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 no.
And Mr. Bliss, may I say something? Is there a way, I mean, I know there's probably not a way, but it just seems like lately we've been having these things popping up that we have to vote on during board member business when they're supposed to be voted on at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. And I guess my question, it goes back to planning. Is there a way in the planning process that can be explained to people how the process works? Like you have the public hearing and then you vote on it the next time, and that needs to be sort of put up front when people are first doing their planning so that it fits in with their timeline and our timeline, because then we wouldn't get into these situations where we have to make decisions based on what we hear the same night. Because really, to be honest with you, it makes me uncomfortable to have to do that unless there's some kind of real reason to do it. And I understand their reason, but this has happened a couple times recently, and I just would feel more comfortable if we stuck to the protocol, because that's sort of the way it's set up and what citizens understand.
I'm going to defer to you, Marty. Is there a policy that we make, or?
Well, I know planning advises applicants that, generally not generally, but as a policy, the board looks at their request at the next meeting, assuming there's no problems. And so really the board itself can make a policy saying we won't consider those requests. I mean, it's within your...
Well, I like to be flexible because sometimes there are emergencies, but I guess I'm just trying to state the way I feel about, like this has happened a couple times recently, and I just would feel better if we just stuck to the protocol.
Let me say this, this could be an emergency if you look at time and construction.
Mm-hmm.
You can save 6 weeks or 3. Yeah, 6 weeks. We have a little over 6 weeks before we have another one. Over 3 weeks, rather. 3.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem being flexible, and I think that this is what we as a board is all about, helping the people when we can help the people. But anytime it's a controversial or some kind of issue about it, it's a standard thing that can wait, then go on the next meeting. But if it's some extenuating circumstances, like they need to move dirt or they need to meet here before cold weather, and I think we done the dog, it's this doggy daycare. It was something that they had to be out of a building before we could vote next time because the lease was up, and so there wasn't no issues about it. So we put that on. It's been several that I've been aware of, so I don't have a problem with the board being flexible.
This happens in every district. It's not just one or the other, and I don't think we've gone ahead when we've had controversy.
No, we're not going to go for everybody.
Right, we're always good about that.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Mary. I'd rather see a policy that would push things like this off. And I know I've personally kind of would have violated that policy with certain things that brought things up during board report that we voted on. I think there's probably a way to write the policy so that, there are exceptions so that, a supermajority of the board or something like that could override the policy for exceptional circumstances. My concern is bringing things up last minute, not only bringing things up last minute, but when everybody else has gone home, who may have come for the public hearing or something like that, so they can't see the resolution of it, and maybe they were planning on coming back for the vote.
Well, let me ask this, and I probably need direction from Marty. If we know something like this is coming up before the board in Roanoke, and we are having a public hearing, can we bring this to a motion after the public hearing, rather than wait until board report, which is right now 3 hours later?
Yeah, I mean, you can always.
You can
bring
add
up
it to
items
business.
That's.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll
Yeah.
inform the board members that this is something that we would like to bring up prior to that.
Yeah, maybe if we, had known ahead of time that this was going to be something asked of us to do, then, you could get your questions out there, I don't know.
Yeah.
This seems like there's
Let's
just
kind of look at it that way, then. If
You,
that's-
you remember the situation, when the school situation that we got in, we discussed it and waited to the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
If we had had it while the people was
Yeah.
here, but people, I think, spoke to the media and says, we waited till everybody
Right.
left to vote on something or bring it up. And so there may be some pros to voting after the public hearing while people are here, because once you have the public hearing, people will sit out there for a while, and you keep going through them, and it's getting late. They leave. They don't get to hear the results.
Yeah.
Well,
They
you
do.
may want to consider not taking up motions or action, business action during board reports, but having a place on your agenda, either adding it to business or after your public hearings to do it. That way it wouldn't be waiting till the end.
Like, we could have added that to new business.
Yeah.
Right.
And said so at the time, but we didn't.
Well, we maybe should do an addendum on
Yeah,
it.
add it to
Yeah.
new business would probably be
Do
the
an
most
addendum on
appropriate
it.
place to put it.
Just
no
like we
business.
had a lot of speakers about the prices for it tonight,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to take that up because we had a lot of speakers and it was clearly a lot of emotions
No,
involved with
yeah,
that, and that wouldn't be appropriate, at least in my opinion.
If the goal is to take your action, the actual action and vote by the board before the end of the meeting, then maybe if you just move it or add it to the business sections and not wait. And it traditionally, that's your opportunity as board reports to do that. So you may want to consider having a different place on your agenda to address that earlier when people are still in the room.
Could we add a line on our standard agendas under new business, like maybe the first item of new business, like motions?
Well, my question is, can we verbally do an addendum?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
So long as
we
you
have
add
that
it.
space, so that might be the right place to
that's
do
where
it.
you add it.
Add it to the addendum for new business,
Okay.
whether it's written or not in advance.
Would that addendum require a vote to be added to the
Yes.
agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So if somebody suggested something and he was outvoted, then it couldn't be added?
Right.
Okay. That would be
That
fine.
sound good?
That would be fine.
All right. Are you, that all, Gary? Okay. I have to apologize, but I gotta get home. I'm not feeling the best, and I'd asked Mr. Brown to carry on. I was gonna leave an hour ago, but I felt I needed to be here for this one. And, thank you.
We hope you feel better.
Yeah, I'll feel better. I got an appointment in the morning.
That's good. I hope you didn't bring none of your germs.
I'm sure you don't want to stay in your city.
Do you really want to use that microphone?
No, I'm pretty tough.
Hey, Jim,
Who's next? Ms. Perkins.
my grandson.
Miss Perkins.
Ms. Perkins, you are up for board member reports.
All right,
I'm gonna move it over.
I'd like to
My
ask-
computer's dead.
I do have just a couple things. Matt, what days, again, for the schools, the dedications and the open houses?
I'm sorry, let me bring up my calendar here.
Yes, yeah.
The first one is October the 6th, which is the Blacksburg High School dedication at 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
October the 6th, that's a
That's
Sunday at 2 p.m.
BHS, right?
BHS. And then the AHS, the Auburn High School, is the following weekend, the 13th, the Sunday at 3 p.m.
Auburn.
Auburn's on the October 13th, Sunday at 3 p.m.
Thank you.
And is the school board met, they're inviting dignitaries or whoever they want to speak, are they taking care of that? Like, are they inviting the General Assembly people and all that?
I have no idea.
Okay, because that would be
That's their thing, so.
thing that they
That's right.
should be looking at. Okay.
I know there's some other things, but I don't have anything. Let's just go home.
Well, no, we got to get to Supervisor Biggs next.
I don't really have a report except to say that I really think that the dinner with the Water Authority was really a really good way to send off Jerry Higgins, and just again that he's just done a fantastic job the whole time he's been here. Really, we'll miss him.
One, I wanted to explain my vote in regards to the budget, school board with the monies that were left over. In my mind, when we had, and they made a very passionate presentation about maintenance, and that there's that rollover money, none of it really was going towards maintenance. It was all being used up for operations. That's the reason I voted against it. Also, in our weekly reports, there's a letter from the Sheriff's Department, and I looked at our agendas on Thursday, and I missed the reports on that they were put in our drop boxes. I think it's very informative in regards to his stance and in regards to the county garage.
Right.
That's it.
Mr. Cable?
Nothing much to report on the school board or anything like that. I'm glad Ms. Perkins reminded us about the upcoming dedications. I hope you can all make them, obviously. I did actually want to bring one thing up and request the staff gather some information, and that's about potential costs due to a personnel policy change. Unfortunately, I wish Ms. Edmonds had remained. The potential of adding paid maternity or paternity leave to county benefits, and see what kind of impact that might have on basically what kind of costs might be involved for that. I know we abide by the Family Medical Leave Act and things like that right now, but one of the constant concerns that this board has expressed is that we can't keep up with salaries for sometimes losing people to neighboring localities and things like that. But one of the ways that we can keep up, we can't match salaries, is with better benefits. And so this is something that might be a way depending on a relatively low cost of offering people. I think there's an ethical argument to be made as well, is that we're long past the time when one family member stayed home to watch the children. We're now, and especially in people who come to work in county government, many of them are in two household. Two jobs. It's so late. I'm so tired. In 2-job households. Yes, and so taking one income away for 3 months is a substantial hardship on them, and so I'd like to.
Okay, let me just clarify so I'm sure what you're speaking about. You're
Sure.
talking about 12 weeks of paid leave in addition to sick leave?
I'm talking about what would be involved in offering paid maternity or paternity leave, so that people would not necessarily have to dip into a sick leave bank or annual leave to be paid to be home with their newborn child.
Okay.
And that would also maybe be impacted by this new disability plan. I don't know if short-term disability would cover that for a hybrid person who hires and things like that.
Well, that's part of looking at the leave policies and determining what falls under what. But on the opposite side, are you looking at only that one issue or similar types of leave
I only
concerns?
care, right now, I'm mostly interested in maternity and paternity leave.
Okay, so anything to do with people needing to be off with elderly parents and care and that sort of thing?
I am not requesting that right now.
Okay.
I say you should look at that also as being a survivor of having done that.
I would be fine with adding that request, but I would like to keep the issues separated. That we could deal with them together if we wanted to, but I would like to.
Yeah. Mr. Brown, I want to just add something.
Yes.
looking at the clock and all, is there a way when the agendas are being planned that we could really look at how many public hearings and work sessions are scheduled for one meeting? Because this is a second meeting in a row where it's sort of lasted longer than normal. Is there a way to bring more balance to that? Or maybe if you're not going to have a closed session, I don't know, you have to change the whole policy, you have your work session before, but I just wondered if there was a way to bring more balance.
Well, we didn't know trash would create that much controversy, When we looked at it, when you look at a work session and you started, I don't know how long trash lasted, but it wore me plumb out.
It was about an hour.
Yeah, I think it was a little longer than an hour. When you get into some of the things like this, you try to say, hey, I was hoping that we'd at least be out by 10, even if it wasn't long when we were sitting there looking at it. But the county staff and the chair, and we always sit around and look and says that, I even jokingly, Carl, you want to put a couple more things on the agenda? Just jokingly, but I'm glad that we didn't. So we can talk about that a little bit at our next agenda review meeting. And anybody else got anything?
No. I want to ask one question. What are the dates? I knew I had something else. What are the dates for those community meetings that we established, or have we established those?
They got one of them established, I believe.
Yes, right.
From the email I got today.
November the 18th, Monday. Well, I don't think we have a time, but that's going to be in District 2, probably at Gilbert Lincoln.
Yeah, I had that one down.
That's the only one that's scheduled.
Okay, good.
I got one quick thing, if you through. You through? One quick thing. And this is just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. Once we as a board give staff a mandate, like this trash thing, can we let them go do their work and come back and report to us and save our questions to that time? Because who knows, somebody will go talk to an attendant and says, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Well, we get in the cart, before the horse. And I think that when we give them a mandate to do something and to report back and research it, that the county administrator should go out and do his work. We shouldn't dibby-dab in it, talking to staff, talking to employees, or talking to stuff until he comes back with his report. When he comes with his report, that's the time we should ask our questions up here at the board. That's just my thoughts.
I agree.
I've been guilty of it.
Well, yeah.
Guilty of it. And part of it, when I look at the constitutional officers, I look at them as not being our employees because they're constitutional. But I have been guilty of it and talked with Craig about it and tried to tell him that where I was coming from and wasn't intending to stir the pot. But maybe that comes with being on the board for 2 years and not.
Well, sometimes when I look at it, I may look at it something that's going on that, and I looked at it this way. We're looking at the animal shelter and this, that, and that. And we're looking whether outsourcing or keeping the garage. And I'm thinking back, I said, well, I know Chris, I like Chris. Does he want that thing to fail so we can keep the garage and not do the animal shelter or something? I'm trying to think outside the box. Do I want this study to fail in some way, shape, or form so we can't keep the animal shelter going? And it might not be right. I'm just thinking, I'm just using that for an example.
Going out and seeing the building and being there and seeing it leak and talking with the guys, and listening actually, not talking with them, but asking them, tell me, what do you think I need to know? Maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, but when they pointed to the walls and my thoughts on the building being past its prime, that was, when we talked about it, but it was informative to go out there. At the same time, this isn't the military, but there is a chain of command. And while I do believe sometimes it's good for a general to talk with private, you're still supposed to go through the chain of command, and I understand that. And it wasn't intended to undermine Craig. I believe after going there that we need that garage, putting more money in it would be a waste. And seeing the lifts, that they're all designed to be moved, they're not in the ground. That was very informative of me seeing that, and that they're brand new. But as far and listening to the guys, I'll say this, when they looked at me and they said they really appreciate me listening to what they had to say, I think that that's part of what I'm supposed to do. At the same time, I tried to inform all of you and say this is what I'm doing, including Craig and Carol on that, because I knew I was kind of going outside the chain of command. Did I realize the extra work that I might put on the staff by going outside the chain of command? I did, and didn't think about it. But I made sure that when I realized I'd stirred the pot, call and say, hey, listen, I made a mistake. But my conversation out there wasn't to kill the animal shelter. And matter of fact, when I came away from it, I looked at that building. But it was to try to figure out and listen to the folks about what decisions we'll be making. And I am a hands-on person. I am a type of person that doesn't necessarily follow all the rules all the time, even though I'm a lawyer. So, that being said.
You're a lawyer, that explains it.
Well, your pictures in the newspaper are really good.
Now, don't.